Chapter 4493. Is there anything else? Murong Jiang's face turned pale, and he asked in a trembling voice. Brother Murong. Meng Qing said indifferently, I want to ask you, as the Murong family's patriarch, if you lead all the Murong family's disciples, can you accomplish such a great feat? Murong Jiang didn't seem to think that Meng Qing was mocking him. He thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, if we don't care about the cost, we might be able to do it. But, after this battle, I'm afraid my Murong family will be removed from the hidden Immortal continent. That's right, if the Murong family is like this, then so is my Meng family. Meng Qing nodded. The Fortune Gate's disciples are already domineering, what else do we need? The whole place fell silent again. From this day on, the Fortune Gate's valiant image would no longer have any objections to the Fortune Gate's disciples dominating the mysterious yellow list. Miss Nan. Meng Qing handed the jade eye to Gong Shujingya, then asked Nan Huayue. The battle between the three great sages and Senior Shao is not recorded in detail. No matter what, Taoist Shao is still a grand ascension stage cultivator of our human race. He was able to defeat three great sages of the Thousand Demons' sacred ground. This is definitely worthy of our respect. Zhai Xinglu should have recorded the battle in detail. Nan Huayue pursed her lips and smiled. Senior Meng, you're making things difficult for my Zhai Xinglu. That was a battle between the four supreme cultivators of our three continents. Other than the four great sages of the Great Sage Temple, the Immortal Palace's 9th grade literature star, the Thunder Temple's 3 Buddhist lords, and the various clans' patriarchs, who else can see the truth clearly? We're willing to pay a high price. Murong Jiang hurriedly said, as long as Zhai Xinglu can get the truth. Even if you have the source stones, you need to be alive to spend them. Nan Huayue was still smiling as she replied indifferently, my Zhai Xinglu has the foresight. All right. Murong Jiang knew that this matter was too difficult, so he said perfunctorily and didn't say anything else. Seniors. Nan Huayue looked at the somewhat quiet starry sky and said, if there's nothing else you need from me, I'll have to put away this defensive formation that I'm challenging to bury the hatchet. The group of Confucian martial grandmasters had been absent-minded for a long time. They all responded in low voices, and the halos around them gradually faded away. Not long after, the starry sky disappeared, and the stars scattered in all directions. The pavilions and corridors once again appeared. Nan Huayue took one last look at his surroundings and stepped into the full moon. The moonlight disappeared, and the entire defensive array turned into darkness. The challenge to bury the hatchet was not held, but all the disciples' blood was boiling with excitement. Various families had also activated their pavilions' defensive formations. No one knew what the other families were discussing, but everyone knew that there was only one topic in the entire star-plucking pavilion, and that was Xiaohua and the Fortune Gate. Xiaohua stepped into the full moon, but as the moonlight overflowed, his figure had already landed on a corridor. Without waiting for Xiaohua to take a few more glances, a Confucian cultivator immediately bowed and said, Senior, our palace lord invites you. All right. Xiaohua nodded. He turned to look at Mo Jianli and asked, are you coming with this old man, or with the star-plucking pavilion? Mo Jianli did not hesitate. He bowed and said, this junior has already promised the star-plucking pavilion. If this junior does not fulfill this promise, this junior feels that he is not worthy to be a Fortune Gate disciple. Ha good. This is the true Mo Jianli. Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, you can go now. When you come out of the Star Moon Palace, follow this old man back to the Fortune Gate. Yes, Junior understands. Mo Jianli agreed, and found a way to leave. Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror and put Yuanya away. He then said to the Confucian cultivator, you lead the way. Senior, please. The Confucian cultivator respectfully gestured and led Xiaohua to a flight of stairs. In a short while, Xiaohua had already reached the top floor. The Confucian cultivator did not dare to approach, and Xiaohua entered the main hall. The interior of the hall was no different from when Xiaohua had left. However, the black and yellow rankings boards were particularly eye-catching. Seeing Xiaohua enter, Fairy Xingyu clapped and said with a smile, Welcome Great Gate Master Xiao to my star-plucking pavilion. I hope that Great Gate Master Zhao's fortune gate will take care of my star-plucking pavilion's business in the future. How is that possible? Xiao Hua curled his lips and said, My fortune gate still has the endless merchant union. How can we take care of your business? Moreover, the star-plucking pavilion is so powerful that they can even update the mysterious yellow board at the same time. Why would they need my fortune gate to take care of their business? Great Gate Master Xiao, what do you think of my star-plucking pavilion and the endless merchant union? Forming an alliance? Fairy Xingyu said in a teasing tone, The fortune gate is like the sun in the sky. How can you let my star-plucking pavilion bask in some glory? Xiao Hua. There was worry on Su Zhirai's face as he frowned. This time, you've shown off too much. Although you were forced to do this, your fortune gate's mysterious yellow list can be seen as a challenge to the Immortal Palace's prestige. How can the Immortal Palace let this go? Moreover, the Dao Gate is the common enemy of the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect. With your current strength, you may not be afraid of 1 or 2 Confucian cultivators, but what if the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect join forces? And don't forget, you also offended 3 great sages from the Great Temple. Back then, that brat Grand Mist was too arrogant and didn't know how to hide his strength and bide his time. He was suppressed by the Confucian cultivators, the Buddhist sect, and the demonic beast race together. His subordinates were also completely wiped out. Your current situation is no different from that brat Grand Mist. In fact, it's even worse. You have to think of a way out. That's right, Grand Mist's cultivation wasn't as high as yours back then, and his subordinates weren't as strong as your fortune gate. Even so, the immortals, Buddhists, and demonic beasts couldn't tolerate it, so how can they tolerate you? Fairy Xingyu added, Great Gate Master Xiao, I'm afraid you don't have many good days left. If it's not possible, you should follow us to the immortal world. Many thanks for the 2 seniors' concern. Xiao Hua smiled. My situation is different from the Grand Mist ancestors, and the current situation of the 3 continents is also different from that time. I don't think that the immortals, Buddhists, and demonic beasts can join forces again. Since they can't join forces, I don't have to be afraid of them. As for the Star Moon Palace, I will naturally follow seniors to take a look. However, I will definitely not enter the immortal world through the Star Moon Palace. If I leave, what will happen to the fortune gate? Junior's disciples haven't grown up yet. Su Ji looked at Xiao Hua and didn't speak for a long time. After a while, he said, Xiao Hua, to be honest, I've seen many outstanding Taoist cultivators before I became an immortal. After I became an immortal, I've seen even more elites from various realms. After I accidentally entered the 3 continents, I've also seen many outstanding Confucian cultivators. However, you're the first to grow so quickly. I want to give you some advice, but after thinking about it, you don't have any lofty ambitions in your heart. You're also infinitely benevolent. If the immortals, Buddhists, and demonic beasts didn't force you too much, you probably wouldn't have stirred up such a huge mess. However, the problem is that people have no choice in the martial world. There are many things that we can't predict at this time. You should be careful. Xiao Hua smiled and nodded. I'm really flattered by Senior's praise. Senior's words are exactly what I wanted. I was born in a farmer's family, and my whole life's cultivation has been based on the idea of living a comfortable life. As long as the immortals, Buddhists, and demonic beasts don't do anything to my fortune gate, I won't cause trouble. I can understand your thinking. Fairy Xingyu shook her head and said, However, Immortal Emperor Gaochen, Mahavarakana revered sage, and the golden-winged Great Peng may not think so. Oh, and the Great Sage Temple's newly promoted 7 stars Great Sage. Although he knows you well, he's still a demonic beast. He will think for the Great Sage Temple and the demonic beast race. He may not care about your little friendship. Your fortune gate has caused too much of a commotion. It's impossible for them not to be on guard and not do anything to you. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and probed, Junior's fortune gate may be in trouble, but that's in the future. Senior's star-picking tower may be in trouble now, right? Fairy Xingyu was stunned and asked curiously, Xiao Hua, what do you mean? Could it be that someone is coveting star-picking tower? Su Ji immediately understood and probed. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Junior is curious. Someone actually dares to have designs on the two seniors. Which aristocratic family is it? Fairy Xingyu's face instantly turned frosty. She said coldly, they're really tired of living. I don't know which aristocratic family it is. Xiao Hua replied. However, it seems that most of them are Star-Picking Tower's disciples. Su Ji glanced at Fairy Xingyue and said, I've already told you to show more of your strength when necessary. I'm afraid that the 7th grade essence force that you have displayed has caused your subordinates' ambitions to soar. Who is it? Fairy Xingyu asked. How would I know? Xiao Hua's neck stiffened. I just met them. Why didn't you investigate? Fairy Xingyu was so angry that she almost jumped up. Star-Picking Tower doesn't belong to me, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Moreover, didn't Senior remind me when I went out earlier? Don't have designs on Star-Picking Tower? Damn it. Fairy Xingyu cursed. Forget it. Su Ji could tell that Xiao Hua was angering Fairy Xingyu. He waved his hand and said, let Xiao Hua explain the situation. Yes, Senior. Xiao Hua stopped smiling and explained what he had encountered. Fairy Xingyu said fiercely, I've been paying attention to the movements outside Star-Picking Tower. I didn't expect them to be so bold as to play tricks under my nose. You withdrew so many Star-Picking Towers from the Thousand Demons' sacred realm this time. It must have affected the interests of some tower masters. Su Ji said with a smile. It seems that you have to thank Xiao Hua. If it weren't for the arrival of a human Mahayana realm expert, these people would have already taken action. Humph. Fairy Xingyu stood up and curled her lips. I'd like to see who dares to take action. His arrival has made things more troublesome for me. With that, Fairy Xingyu floated out. Chapter 4494. Seeing Fairy Xingyu leave, Su Ji shook his head slightly and said, Alas, she's so strong. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat, and he said in a low voice, Senior, why don't you say it in front of her? Su Ji put away the expression on his face and replied indifferently, Why should I say it? Senior. Xiao Hua wanted to play matchmaker and said, Actually, how can you not understand Senior Xingyu's thoughts? Sometimes, the window paper still needs us male cultivators to poke through it. Su Ji looked at Xiao Hua meaningfully and said, Do you know what I'm thinking? I don't know. Xiao Hua answered honestly. Then don't say too much. Su Ji said angrily, Just take care of yourself. Among the 3 continents, you're the one with the most trouble now. Hee hee. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Senior, don't worry. Junior knows what to do. Well, I know that every cultivator has their secrets, and you're no exception. Su Ji nodded. I don't want to probe too much. Oh, by the way, Fairy Xingyu and I sensed some fluctuations related to the secrets of heaven in the direction of the Hall of Heroes. However, when we investigated the Star-Picking Tower and gathered the disciples to ask, we didn't find any clues. This matter, is it related to you? Secrets of heaven? Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. After thinking for a moment, he nodded and said, Junior saw the Hall of Heroes in the Hall of Heroes and had some understanding of karma. If the secrets of heaven are related to karma, then it's related to me. Su Ji gasped and said in surprise, The way of karma? One of the 3,000 great Daos, the way of karma? You actually know how to cultivate the way of karma? Xiao Hua shook his head and said, Junior doesn't know what the way of karma is. Junior just met a woman named Wuxia on the Dawn Rain continent. She gave me 2 jade slips, one was the sun shrouding art, and the other was the heaven control technique. Junior first cultivated the sun shrouding art, then dabbled in the heaven control technique. This so-called heaven control technique might have some relationship with the karma that Senior mentioned. Wuxia. Su Ji frowned, and a rare solemn expression appeared on his face. He transmitted a voice transmission, Are you sure her name is Wuxia? Xiao Hua was startled and also nodded and said, That's right. It's Wuxia, this Junior won't remember wrongly. Su Ji thought for a moment, then raised his hand. A lightning net the size of a fist appeared in his hand. As he waved his hand, the lightning net flew out and covered the space several hundred feet around them. As the lightning net entered the space, obscure fluctuations appeared in the space. Xiaohua. Su Ji transmitted his voice again. Does Jiuxia have any obvious characteristics? There are no obvious characteristics. Seeing how serious Su Ji was, Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent and honestly replied, "She's a beautiful woman." "Is that woman so beautiful that you can't forget her?" Su Ji asked. "Even if you don't think about her, she will still appear in your mind. Or do you want to forget her but you can't forget her?" Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said, "Yeah. Could it be that Senior has encountered it before? I don't have the same opportunity as you." Since Su Ji already knew, his face regained its calmness and he replied indifferently, "I just saw such a record in a secret record of the Immortal realm." Xiaohua was even more anxious and transmitted his voice in a low voice. "Senior, can you explain in detail?" Su Ji didn't answer him. Instead, he closed his eyes and used his thumb and forefinger to pinch the space between his eyebrows, rubbing it gently. A wisp of lightning flickered between his eyebrows. Xiaohua didn't dare to disturb him and only watched quietly. After a moment, Su Ji opened his eyes and sighed. "Xiaohua, do you know about Qingqiu Mountain?" "Qingqiu Mountain?" Xiaohua shook his head almost without thinking. "This junior doesn't know. Then do you know about the nine-tailed fox?" Xiaohua still shook his head. "This junior doesn't know. Qingqiu Mountain is a barren mountain in ancient times, and the nine-tailed fox clan lives on this mountain. The nine-tailed fox clan knows yin and yang and is good at transformation. They are often associated with the powerhouses who changed the world in ancient times. Moreover, every nine-tailed fox is a rare beauty in the eyes of humans, and also a rare demon in the eyes of demons. Let's put it this way. The nine-tailed fox is a demon condensed from the most beautiful yin in the world. It is a fatal temptation to every existence with yang aura. However, they don't seem to reveal their true appearance to any human or demon, and would only take out their illusory appearance unless they decide to follow that person or demon for life. Of course, no one can tell whether it's an illusory appearance or their true appearance, which is why no one knows how beautiful they are." Although Su Ji was transmitting his voice was still very low and he continued, "It's said that the nine-tailed fox clan has always started their name with Jiu. If I'm not mistaken, the Jiuxia you met is a descendant of the nine-tailed fox of Qingqiu Mountain." Seeing Su Ji so solemn, Xiaohua asked curiously, "This Jiuxia said she's not from the Dawn Rain continent, but this junior doesn't know where she's from either. Could she really be from Qingqiu Mountain?" "That's absolutely impossible." Su Ji shook his head. The nine-tailed fox of Qingqiu Mountain would never come to the present realm. She could only be a descendant whose bloodline had wandered to the lower realm. Also, could there be some taboo in Qingqiu Mountain? Xiaohua asked again. Su Ji nodded. "That's right. If it weren't for the three continents, this Su wouldn't have dared to say the three words Qingqiu Mountain." "Why?" Xiaohua asked curiously. "Don't ask why, this Su doesn't know either." Su Ji replied. "This Su is merely a punisher of the Punisher Palace." Hiss. Xiaohua was stunned and stared at Su Ji. "Then why are you telling this junior all this, senior?" Sigh. Su Ji sighed in a rare instance and looked up towards the distance, his gaze seemingly piercing through time and space as he said, "Because this Su had received guidance from the nine-tailed fox before ascending to immortality. Later, after ascending to immortality, I obtained somewhere in the Immortal realm the legacy of the Qingqiu Mountain lineage that had fallen to the Immortal realm. Although this Su's divination technique is evolved from thunderbolts, its foundation is still the legacy of the Qingqiu Mountain." Xiaohua smiled bitterly. "You seem to be saying too much, senior. You don't have to tell this junior all this." Su Ji shook his head. "This Su had long predicted that you were fated to meet this Su. Previously, this Su only thought that you were related to the Xingyue Palace, but I didn't expect that you were actually related to the nine-tailed fox. Think about it, that Jiuxia. How did you get to know her?" Boom. When Xiaohua heard this, it was as if he was suddenly enlightened. His body shook as if he had been struck by lightning. He looked at Su Ji with a dumbstruck expression and muttered, "Jiao?" Jiao Xia said that what she wanted this junior to do was too difficult. It would take 10,000 years or even 100,000 years to accomplish it. Therefore, she did not tell this junior what she wanted this junior to do. She is indeed a cunning nine-tailed fox. She is indeed a nine-tailed fox who knows yin and yang. Su Ji sighed. If she hadn't been able to predict that you would meet this Su in the 3 continents, you would have to cultivate for 100,000 years before you could ascend to the immortal realm and meet this Su. Xiaohua was confused again and smiled bitterly. Could it be that finding senior is what Jiao Xia wants this junior to do? To be precise, it's to find the inheritance that Qingqiu Mountain left in the immortal realm, not to find this Su. As Su Ji spoke, he tapped between his eyebrows, and the lightning mark between his eyebrows flashed again. When a thumb-sized lightning ball appeared, Su Ji instructed, "Xiaohua, use vigorous thunderbolt to collect this lightning ball. Be careful, don't expose the thing inside the lightning ball." Seeing that Su Ji was so serious, Xiaohua hurriedly tapped between his eyebrows. Several thick lightning threads appeared and landed on the lightning ball, waiting for it to fall between Xiaohua's eyebrows. Su Ji let out a long sigh and ordered again, "Remember, this matter and this item must not be known to anyone. Otherwise, your life will be in danger. Even this Su won't be able to survive." Xiaohua nodded. "This junior is the best at this kind of thing. That's good." Su Ji gave a rare smile. "This item is Qingqiu Mountain's inheritance. You should be able to comprehend it when you're cultivating Fury of Thunder. Oh, right, your so-called mastery of heaven and earth must be related to this inheritance. You should be able to comprehend it when the conditions are right. If that's the case, then Jiao Xia must be related to this item. This junior can then pass this item to Jiao Xia with peace of mind?" Xiaohua asked doubtfully. "It should be." Su Ji shrugged, as if he had put down a heavy burden and replied. "Senior, are you sure?" Xiaohua asked. Su Ji nodded. "Of course. When you come out of Xingyue Palace, you'll understand why I said so." "Yes. This junior understands." Xiaohua nodded. "If this is Jiao Xia's, this junior will definitely." At this point, Xiaohua said happily, "If that's the case, then this junior will definitely return to Dawn Rain Continent." "I don't know." Su Ji shook his head. "Didn't Jiao Xia say that it might be 100,000 years? Maybe she'll go to the immortal realm to look for you." Then, Su Ji reminded him again, "Of course, the matters of Dawn Rain Continent seem to be somewhat secretive. However, since Xingyue didn't say anything, I'm afraid she has some taboos. Don't make things too difficult for her." As he spoke, Su Ji raised his eyebrows and opened his mouth. A thunderbolt struck the air. The thunder net that had previously been hidden in the void revealed itself and entered Su Ji's mouth along with the thunderbolt. In just a few breaths, Fairy Xingyue returned with a murderous look on her face. "How was it?" Su Ji asked. "Did you find it?" "I don't dare to say anything about the 3 continents, but within Xingyue, there's nothing I can't do." Fairy Xingyue replied with a cold snort. Xiaohua smiled and asked, "In that case, other than Zhai Xinglu, it also involves the hidden immortal continent?" Fairy Xingyue glared at Xiaohua and said fiercely, "It's only been a few days. Why are you becoming more and more like Su Ji? Can't you say something nice?" Chapter 4495. Hearing this, Xiaohua looked at Fairy Xingyu innocently, touched his nose, and said, "I'm not like Senior Su, but like Senior Su, I like to seek truth from facts." "Seek truth from facts? You have the nerve to say that?" "You touched your nose again." Fairy Xingyu replied. "You guessed right. I removed a few star-picking towers in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, but 2 tower masters were not satisfied. They wanted to take advantage of me entering the Star Moon Palace to collude with the Confucian family to seize the Star Moon Palace. Unfortunately, although I found the 2 tower masters and even found out about the Confucian cultivators who sneaked into the star-picking tower, I couldn't find out which Confucian family was behind them. I searched the soul of one of the tower masters and his primordial spirit exploded. Then I used the secret technique of the Palm Palace. That Confucian cultivator's primordial spirit didn't explode, but I couldn't find anything. It's really strange. Su Ji said indifferently, "Don't worry. You have a lot of time before the Star Moon Palace appears." But then, Su Ji suddenly raised his head and looked to the east. He whispered, "I'm afraid you don't have time." Sure enough, Fairy Xingyu also looked in that direction and smiled bitterly. "You're right." Xiaohua released his divine consciousness in surprise. Unfortunately, he didn't find anything. After a few breaths, Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu looked solemn. Fairy Xingyu said to Su Ji, "Think about it carefully. What are we not prepared for? I'll get them to activate the star-picking tower now." "Okay." Su Ji nodded. After Fairy Xingyu left, he pointed to a quiet room and said to Xiaohua, "Xiaohua, that's a quiet room. You can meditate there. When we get to the Chitty River, I'll call you out. At that time, I'll need to borrow your magic power." "Yes, I understand." Xiaohua nodded, got up, and entered the quiet room. The quiet room was not big, only about 100 feet in size. It was very different from the usual luxurious style of the star-picking tower. When Xiaohua saw the praying mat in the middle of the quiet room, his heart warmed again. Needless to say, Su Ji must have used this room for his own quiet cultivation when he came to Zhai Xinglu. Now, Su Ji had given this quiet room to Xiaohua to use. Of course, there were many quiet rooms that could be used in Zhai Xinglu, but Su Ji had taken out the quiet room that he was used to. It was clear that he saw Xiaohua as his junior. Xiaohua sat down cross-legged and pondered for a moment. Then he waved his hand and sent out a jade talisman, setting up the capital star formation. After scanning with his divine sense and confirming that there were no flaws, Xiaohua sat down with peace of mind, raised his thumb, and placed it on his forehead. Thunder flashed and the ball of lightning Su Ji gave Xiaohua flew out again. However, at this moment, the ball of lightning had just appeared and it immediately emitted a faint fluctuation. The fluctuation had only just appeared when Xiaohua's mind swept the ball of lightning into the space in an instant. The ripples then charged towards the capital star array. The fluctuations weakened, but when they collided with the capital star formation, the space several meters to the left of Xiaohua trembled. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and raised his right hand, using the thunder palm. At that moment, the lightning palm was different from the lightning palms displayed by ordinary cultivators. It was formed from the 5 Qi righteous lightning, 9 firmaments divine lightning, 3 corpses in lightning and nether demonic lightning. When the lightning descended, the fluctuations were instantly eliminated, leaving not a trace behind. Soon after, Xiaohua closed his eyes in satisfaction. His eyes focused on his nose, and his nose focused on his heart as he began to meditate. Xiaohua's mind fell into the space and immediately turned into Jade Archive Xiaohua. The ball of lightning that had been swept into the space by his mind earlier quietly floated there. Although the threads of lightning were constantly flashing, they didn't make any sound. The light and shadow emitted by the threads of lightning were also extremely strange and constantly changing. Even Jade Archive Xiaohua was dumbfounded when he saw this. Looking at the space around the light and shadow, although there wasn't any force, the threads of lightning were still forced out of the cracks. Ripples of the same cryptic fluctuations spread out in all directions. Jade Archive Xiaohua raised his hand and pointed. With a tearing sound, it was as if silk was being torn apart. Under the threads of lightning, layers of lightning bolts rushed out like dragons and crazily collided with Jade Archive Xiaohua's finger. Jade Archive Xiaohua frowned and made a grabbing motion with his right hand. Tens of thousands of layers of crystal-like light shields instantly appeared and trembled as they imprisoned the space several meters around the threads of lightning. The threads of lightning were also powerful. They crazily attacked the restriction and broke through layer after layer. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of layers of restrictions were like blooming flower buds. This is the restriction set up by Su Ji. Feeling the familiar fury of lightning within the threads of lightning, Jade Archive Xiaohua pondered. However, this restriction seems to be targeted at the inheritance item inside. When I forcibly broke the restriction, it triggered the restriction. While Xiaohua was thinking, Jade Archive Xiaohua's right hand made a grabbing motion. Hum hum hum. With several explosions, tens of thousands of light barriers appeared once again. When the horned dragon-like lightning threads disappeared, 90% of the light barriers had been penetrated. The threads of lightning disappeared and the lightning ball also turned invisible. At the same time, a 9-colored beam of light let out a loud roar and rushed high into the sky. The 9-colored beam of light was so gorgeous that it reflected on Jade Archive Xiaohua's face and made it look sparkling and translucent. Inside the beam of light, a palm-sized 9-tailed fox sculpture appeared. When Jade Archive Xiaohua's gaze landed on the sculpture, he immediately felt that everything in front of him was multicolored, and a kaleidoscopic world was born near Jade Archive Xiaohua. Jade Archive Xiaohua was startled and hurriedly closed his eyes. However, the rotating multicolored world was like a flower floating in his mind, and it made him feel like he was sinking deeper and deeper. Damn it! Jade Archive Xiaohua cursed and quickly retreated. Thunder appeared between his eyebrows. Sure enough, the thunder struck and shattered the multicolored world. In front of Jade Archive Xiaohua's eyes was another pillar of light that soared into the sky. Jade Archive Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and his eyebrows turned into lightning. Through this lightning, Jade Archive Xiaohua was able to see the colorful fox sculpture clearly. However, Jade Archive Xiaohua only glanced at the colorful fox sculpture and immediately frowned and looked up at the pillar of light that pierced the sky. The pillar of light was still rushing up and there was no sign of it stopping. Damn it, this inheritance item of Qingqiu Mountain is too strange. No wonder Senior Su warned I. Jade Archive Xiaohua sighed and stretched out his hands. His left hand reached down and his right hand reached up and pressed down. Jade Archive Xiaohua's hands suddenly crossed space and landed on the two ends of the pillar of light that was madly rushing out. Then Jade Archive Xiaohua put his hands together again. Boom boom boom. Like the sound of the pillar of air exploding, the huge pillar of light was actually pressed into the 9-tailed colorful fox sculpture by Jade Archive Xiaohua. Then, Jade Archive Xiaohua did not wait for the 9-tailed colorful fox sculpture to make any more movements. He grabbed with one hand and a layer of restriction fell on the painted sculpture. The painted sculpture then returned to its calm state. The Jade Archive Xiaohua frowned slightly and looked at the painted sculpture. He saw that the endless waves of light appeared again. The waves of light rippled like fine lines, and the 9-tailed fox in the painted sculpture disappeared in an instant. A strange and clever squirrel was revealed. Before Jade Archive Xiaohua could see clearly, another wave of light emerged under the fine lines and another ferocious and strange demonic beast was transformed. Jade Archive Xiaohua was surprised. In a few breaths of time, the colorful fox had changed into no less than a dozen different appearances. Along with Jade Archive Xiaohua's surprise, the beautiful appearance of Wuxia changed. That smile yet not smile, that angry yet not angry voice was like the first time Xiaohua saw it. It's really powerful. Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded. Wuxia's appearance disappeared and a 9-tailed fox's original appearance was born. The 9-tailed fox's 9 tails each had a different color, and there were endless threads of light in each tail. Each thread of light contained a lot of brilliance, just like a world of brilliance. Looking at the 9-tailed fox's body, there were even more brilliant spots of light like the stars in the starry sky. Not only did they emit brilliance, but they were also endlessly rotating. It seemed that each spot of light had its own trajectory, and each trajectory revealed a kind of mystery. The 9-tailed fox's original appearance was only revealed in a split second. If Jade Archive Xiaohua was not in his space, he would definitely not be able to see it. Then, countless illusions were born on the 9-tailed fox's painted sculpture, and the 9-tailed fox's original appearance could no longer be seen. Jade Archive Xiaohua closed his eyes and thought for a moment. Rumble. The karmic hand hidden in the void within the space appeared. The big hand grabbed, and the 9-tailed fox's painted sculpture flew out of thin air and slowly fell into the big hand. The painted sculpture just touched the karmic hand, and the endless spots of light contained in the painted sculpture immediately flew out like butterflies and landed in various parts of the big hand. Swish, swish, swish. Strange fluctuations rushed out from various parts of the karmic hand. These fluctuations intertwined with each other, and pieces of light and shadow drifted down like fragments where the fluctuations intertwined. And within these lights and shadows, there were pieces of small worlds hidden within them. Slowly, the nine-tailed fox's painted sculpture merged into the karmic hand, and the space near the karmic hand trembled. In the trembling, it was as if there was an invisible chisel, chiseling out the unclear lines on the karmic hand one by one. Jade Archive Xiaohua watched as the karmic hand became clearer and clearer, and couldn't help but laugh. Jiuxia really is of the Qingqiu lineage. The records in this legacy item are of the same origin as the mastery of heaven and earth. Along with his laughter, Jade Archive Xiaohua's figure began to change. Just like the nine-tailed fox's light and shadow, he had already changed into dozens of images in the span of a few breaths. Only after half a cup of tea's worth of time did Jade Archive Xiaohua's figure appear. He looked at his hands with great satisfaction and laughed. I previously thought that my transformation technique was pretty good, but compared to the Qingqiu lineage's transformation technique, it's like the difference between heaven and earth. The Qingqiu lineage's so-called understanding of yin and yang and being adept at transformation really isn't a bluff. Let the karmic hand comprehend the yin and yang technique. I will learn this transformation technique, and in the future, I'll be able to deceive the 3 continents. Chapter 4496. With that thought in mind, Jade Archive Xiaohua emerged from the space and focused his mind on his physical body. His hands did not seem to make any hand seals as his physical body began to slowly transform. First, it was various forms of humans, then beasts, and finally plants and flowers. It was incredibly lifelike. At the same time that Xiaohua was cultivating the Qingqiu sect's secret art, the dozens of pavilions outside the star-plucking tower were now spinning faster. The flames and colorful lotuses that were the silhouettes of light before were now clouds, while the star-plucking tower that was shaped like a pagoda was now slowly becoming oval. As the clouds fell into the sky, pillars of noble qi crashed down. As the pavilions spun, rays of starlight swayed and appeared. The light screen of stars and moon also gradually rose from the pillars of noble qi. Rumble! When the space hundreds of miles around the star-plucking tower was filled with clouds and starlight, the entire ground began to shake. Amidst the rumbling, the star-plucking tower was uprooted out of thin air. Beneath the ground, the star-plucking tower's foundation broke through the ground. Rocks tumbled and mountain ridges collapsed. A 1,000-mile-long ship flew out from the ground. Lightning arcs flashed around it as it rose into the air. The ship looked similar to the Thunder ship, but in reality, there was a huge difference. The star-plucking tower in the center of the ship alone was something the Thunder ship did not have. Moreover, the lightning arcs around the ship looked powerful, but in reality, they were still relying on the power of the clouds, stars, and moon. They were far less powerful than the Thunder ship. The flying ship first soared into the sky. Countless great qi pillars in the void crashed into the defensive array outside the ship. Auspicious clouds floated out from the defensive array. Woo-woo! Amidst the whistling of the wind, the flying ship began to slowly fly towards the rising sun. Xiaohua hid in the quiet room to cultivate. In the beginning, his physical body still had some shape and could transform into all things in the world. However, in the end, his body no longer looked like a body, nor did it have a fixed shape. It turned into a stream of light and also turned into floating clouds. Spots of light were finally born in the capital star array, as if stars were flashing in the sky. In front of Xiaohua's eyes, the colorful world that he saw when he used the lightning escape to its limit was faintly born again. Xiaohua did not dare to slack off, nor did he dare to further comprehend that level. He merely maintained his original state, carefully comprehending and observing the state of his physical body. The secret arts of Qingqiu flowed in his mind like a clear spring. After an unknown amount of time, the light spots in the entire space flickered and instantly gathered together. Xiaohua's silhouette was revealed. At the same time, thousands of phantoms emerged from the silhouette like a peacock spreading its tail. When the phantoms were annihilated, Xiaohua's smiling figure quietly stood in midair. At this moment, Xiaohua seemed to be standing in the air, yet also seemed to be drawn into the void. His body seemed to be in the light, yet also seemed to be in the darkness. Between the light and the darkness, strands of twisted light rapidly flowed out of Xiaohua's body. The distorted Xiaohua seemed to be both real and illusory at the same time. He was stepping on the boundary between real and illusory. So that's how it is. A smile appeared at the corner of Xiaohua's lips. It had more charm than before, but the compassion in his black and white eyes did not change at all. Xiaohua mused to himself. So-called transformations are nothing more than the combination of light and physical body. The inferior would use the physical body to drive light and shadow, the mediocre would use light and shadow to power the physical body, while the superior would fuse light and shadow together with the physical body. It's a pity. Even if the Qingqiu lineage knows that yin and yang are adept at transformations, they would never know that there is a light escape technique in this world, one that allows one to hide in light as an escape technique. Light and shadow would fuse with the physical body at a superficial level, and the physical body would fuse with light and shadow at a profound level. In the end, the art of yin and yang is the true foundation of the Qingqiu lineage, while transformations are but a minor detail. And yet, I was able to comprehend the surface of it in such a short period of time. Senior Su, the Immortal Realm's enforcer of punishments, had not gained much from the legacy of Qingqiu Mountain for so long. Aside from the fact that Senior Su had never practiced the art of heaven and earth manipulation before, it is also because Senior Su does not possess a demon form and could not grasp the mysteries of the demon's cultivation of the power of stars and moon. More importantly, Senior Su has never refined the rainbow bone, which means he could not comprehend the mysteries of light and physical body. Xiaohua's brow lifted at the thought, an indescribable elegance appearing between his brows. He floated up from the praying mat, raised a hand and grasped. His hand instantly turned into a sheet of light and shadow, and the hundreds of jade talismans that had been laid out in a formation fell into his hand like swallows returning to their nest. Just as he put away the jade talismans, a faint voice wafted from outside the sanctuary. "Xiaohua, this junior is here." Xiaohua hurriedly replied. "Is something the matter, Senior Su? The Chitty River is up ahead. If you don't have anything urgent to cultivate, come out of seclusion first." Su Ji did not use his divine ability, but only transmitted his voice softly from outside. Xiaohua flew to the door of the sanctuary, urged his body to pass through the pavilion, and appeared in front of Su Ji. He smiled and said, "This junior has already finished his meditation and was waiting for Senior to summon me." Su Ji's gaze swept over Xiaohua, and he could not help but be surprised. Behind him, Fairy Xingyu also said curiously, "Xiaohua, you seem to have changed into a different person." Xiaohua touched his nose and said with a wry smile, "Seniors, what do you mean? I've only been cultivating in seclusion for dozens of days. Why do I seem to have changed into a different person?" The ancients have said that a scholar who has been away for 3 days should be looked at with new eyes. Fairy Xingyu looked up and down at Xiaohua again, pursed her lips, and said with a smile, "This sentence is especially suitable for you. Previously you were like a Xiaohua. Although you were budding, you were abnormally shy and had a bit of a dusty aura. But now this Xiaohua has bloomed. Not only is its fragrance assailing the nose, but it is also glorious. Even if light dust falls on it, it will produce a luster. Not to mention other things, just this little habit of yours of wiping your nose. It looked a little funny before, but now, it has a kind of cute and attractive charm. Even I can't help but feel a sense of familiarity." "Elder sister," Xiaohua said with a wry smile, "can you not be so mushy? Why does it sound like there's a lot of cosmetics?" "Xingyue is right," Su Ji said meaningfully, "you have indeed made me look at you in a new light." "Senior, you flatter me." Xiaohua understood tacitly and bowed. "This is all thanks to Senior's kindness. This junior dares not forget it." Su Ji helped Xiaohua up and said, "Opportunities are opportunities. This is the will of the heavens. What are the two of you doing behind my back again? Fairy Xingyu asked. When she saw the two of them acting like this, she immediately understood something. If you give Xingyue to Xiaohua, I will consider telling you. Su Ji turned to look at Fairy Xingyu and said calmly. When Xiaohua heard this, he smiled wryly in his heart and thought, Senior Xiao, are you trying to help me or set a trap for me? Xiaohua naturally wanted Xingyue, but Fairy Xingyu clearly had her own plans and had no intention of handing it over to him. When Xiaohua encountered the betrayal of the two Zhai Xing Lu, he did not express his intentions. He only asked Fairy Xingyu to investigate it herself. He had already made his attitude clear in advance. Zhai Xing Lu had nothing to do with him. Since Fairy Xingyu saw that there were some problems with Zhai Xing Lu, she must be able to predict that Zhai Xing Lu would be in chaos in the future. Given this, Fairy Xingyu might have the intention of entrusting Xiaohua to him. Now that Su Ji had said this, even if Fairy Xingyu had such thoughts, they would definitely be dispelled by Su Ji's words. Sure enough, Fairy Xingyu smiled coldly and said, It's up to you whether you want to say it or not. The matter between two men has nothing to do with me. I just taught a few more secret techniques of the immortal world. Who doesn't know how to do it? Teach me if you have the ability. Su Ji retorted sarcastically, as if he was looking for trouble. Fairy Xingyu was slightly taken aback. However, after a moment, she smiled and said, Of course I know how to. However, that will have to wait until he reaches the immortal world. Let's go. Su Ji glanced at Fairy Xingyu, knowing that she was warning him. However, he did not take it seriously and said, The Star Moon Palace is already close at hand. Aren't you anxious at all? Phew. Fairy Xingyu straightened up and stretched. Her slender body was not much different from Su Ji's. Then, Fairy Xingyu yawned and said lazily, I was naturally excited the first few times. However, I'm used to disappointment now. Even though I've made so many preparations for the appearance of the Star Moon Palace, I don't dare have any more extravagant hopes when I think about the possibility of failure. Su Ji frowned and said, Didn't I tell you? With Xiaohua's help this time, there won't be too much of a problem. Your divination technique? Fairy Xingyu smiled slightly and asked in return, If there was a well-tested divination technique in this world, would you still be banished to the 3 continents? If your divination technique was really useful, would you still need to explore the Star Moon Palace for the 9th time? In this world, there are many fickle people. There are many feelings of loss and loneliness. Change is the essence of the heavenly way. You and I are just ordinary immortals. We can't take a peek at the heart of the heavenly way. Needless to say, Su Ji could already sense the deep sense of loss in Fairy Xingyu's tone. Xiaohua also understood that Fairy Xingyu's heart had been hurt by the 2 traitorous stargazing tower masters. Thus, she had doubts about the entire Star Moon expedition. Su Ji opened his mouth, wanting to say something. However, when the words reached his mouth, he swallowed them back down. This was because Fairy Xingyu also knew what she should say. Xiaohua did not need to say more. However, Xiaohua might not know what Fairy Xingyu wanted to hear. Therefore, Xiaohua glanced at Su Ji and said to Fairy Xingyu with a smile, Fairy, what are you saying? In the eyes of the tens of thousands of humans and demons who entered the Star Moon Palace, you are the heavenly way. They racked their brains to enter the Star Moon Palace and find their own opportunities inside. However, how could they know? You were the one who found the Star Moon Palace. The most fundamental mystery of the Star Moon Palace is the passageway to the immortal world. Humph, of course. Women were the most fickle. Xiaohua's strong flattery made Fairy Xingyu's face instantly look better. She rolled her eyes at Su Ji and said, Can't you say something nice? P.S. I'm glad to hear that Bai Zhibao and Li Tong got married yesterday. I wish the golden couple 100 years of happiness and a long life together. Chapter 4497. Ha! Without waiting for Su Ji to speak, Xiaohua immediately laughed and said, Senior Su, I'll tell you more when we reach the immortal realm. There are too many people now, so it might be inconvenient to talk about some things. Fairy, quickly open Zhai Xing Lu. Fairy Xingyu glanced at Su Ji angrily. When she saw the coldness in Su Ji's eyes, her heart trembled. Just as Xiaohua had speculated, the Punisher Celestial Lord and the Disciplined Celestial Lord were not on good terms, and the Punishment Palace and the Discipline Palace were like fire and water. It was fine if Fairy Xingyu and Su Ji were in the 3 continents, but if they returned to the Immortal Realm, how could they be so free? Although they had not yet returned to the Immortal Realm, Su Ji had already begun to be on guard, and Fairy Xingyu had a premonition of the estrangement between the 2 of them in the Immortal Realm. Alas, even if they are immortals, so what? Fairy Xingyu sighed secretly. With a wave of her sleeve, a cluster of starlight flew out from her hand and rushed to the top of the palace. When the brilliance of the top of the palace appeared, a clear and cloudless blue sky appeared in front of Xiaohua. Su Ji glanced at Fairy Xingyu and said to Xiaohua, "Let's go. This is the Chidi River. The signs of the Star Moon Palace's appearance are obvious. It will appear at any time." But Xiaohua nodded and followed Su Ji out of Jianghu. At this time, Jianghu stopped on a mountain range. On one side of the mountain range, the disciples of the 100 schools of thought had begun to leave Jianghu one after another. The disciples of Jianghu, as well as the cultivators who had been selected to follow Jianghu into the Star Moon Palace, flew to the other side of the mountain range. Xiaohua had just looked around when suddenly, an indescribable wind whistled in the distance. Xiaohua hurriedly turned his head. In the east, a majestic river seemed to have come from the sky. It rushed across the ground and fell to the end of the sky. The river seemed to be endless and also seemed to be bottomless. The orange river sparkled under the sun. If there was more orange, it would be similar to the Blood River. If there was less orange, it would not be as brilliant as it was now. This was the Chidi River. The sparkling scarlet color covered the surface of the river like tiny swimming fish. Wisps of water vapor rushed into the air and emitted a scarlet glow. Although this scarlet glow was very thin, its brilliance was not inferior to the surface of the river. Where the wind blew, the brilliance swayed, and different illusions surged out. Occasionally, some clouds would surge and turn into colored glass, precious pearls, ingots, pearls, and other shapes, making them even more dazzling. Although the scenery of heaven and earth was vivid, after looking at it for a while, Xiaohua felt somewhat bewildered. This was because above the surface of the river, the sound of the wind could be heard. Huge gusts of wind whistled past, as if there were many wind tunnels. The strange sounds were even more soul-stirring than the wails of ghosts and howls of wolves. However, in this violent wind, the surface of the river was picturesque, and the waves were like flowers. It was no different from the usual calm and tranquil waves. What was special was that under those thin ripples, the river water did not have any impurities. It was incomparably clear and bright like a crystal. At a glance, one could see more than a dozen feet. Under the surface of the water, perhaps there were some swaying aquatic plants, perhaps there were some floating algae, but no matter if it was fish, shrimp, or river worms, there were no traces of them. Xiaohua was just about to release his divine sense to investigate, when, boom! The sound of an explosion resounded from several thousand li away in the sky. Immediately, 10,000 waves surged violently like a tide, hiding the sky and covering the earth as they smashed down, covering an area of 10,000 li. Under the waves, an indescribable distortion appeared in the sky of 10,000 li. This distortion was like tens of millions of tiny vortexes. Not only did the nearby airflow mutate, crisscrossing and attacking, even the splashing sunlight flashed with light. The entire space of 10,000 li was filled with these waves, as if an enormous bubble was rapidly spreading in all directions. The ripples soared high into the sky, and clouds were torn apart one after another. Many fine spatial cracks could be faintly seen. The ripples crashed into the river surface, and many ditches that were several feet long were torn open. The ripples blew across the ground, and sand and pebbles were sent flying. Thousands of spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the ground. However, the surface of the river still did not show any waves. The sand and stones on the ground rushed up several feet and then fell back down. It was as if a large hand was firmly pressing down on the space of several thousand li. Xiaohua's gaze fell on the waves of space. Similar to the nine-tailed fox painted sculpture, Layers upon layers of light entered Xiaohua's mind. Tens of thousands of balls of light attracted Xiaohua's gaze. Although Xiaohua tried his best to avoid his gaze falling on these balls of light, in a flash, a spot of light had already appeared in front of him out of thin air. Boom! The moment Xiaohua's gaze fell, a primitive catalog crashed into Xiaohua's mind. This prehistoric catalog was a little different from what Xiaohua had seen before. Although the mountains were extremely tall and the water was extremely deep, the mountains were collapsing and the water was pouring down. Amidst the rumbling of the mountains and rivers, there were many incomparably huge figures crazily fighting. These figures held lightning in their hands and spat out stars from their mouths. With a single punch, the sky would collapse. As their gazes wandered, the stars would explode. All kinds of indescribable wills and unparalleled powers swept through the entire primitive world. These wills were extremely provocative and tyrannical. Even the incomparably huge primitive world could not withstand these wills. Xiaohua was already at the grand ascension stage of the human race, and he had also experienced the ruins and the primordial continent in the past, but as soon as his spiritual sense came into contact with these consciousnesses, he was struck by a sense of inferiority, and a sense of acute pain welled up in his mind. Xiaohua did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly withdrew his gaze and his scattered divine consciousness from the balls of light. However, in the space within 10,000 miles, a remnant red color had already appeared. The moment Xiaohua's gaze fell, the sky gradually darkened. The setting sun, which was supposed to be setting in the west, shone listlessly in this space. Pieces of broken spiritual consciousness, rays of light that had been stripped away, and strands of remnant spiritual consciousness wandered helplessly in the blood-red color. Woo! Just as Xiaohua was about to sigh, a wave that could destroy the heavens and the earth was born in the center of the space. A hurricane suddenly rose with the wave, and thousands of miles of space were torn apart. Wave after wave of collapse spread in all directions. In just an instant, the 10,000 miles of space that was previously covered completely disappeared. The balls of light were void and the waves were void. Even Xiaohua's divine consciousness, which had fallen into the space, was not spared. The collapse of the space was very strange. It was only within 10,000 miles of space, and outside of the wave, it was not affected at all. Furthermore, after the collapse, countless primordial chi of heaven and earth rushed in from other places, and the entire space gradually returned to its original state. Seeing this, Xiaohua could not help but be dumbfounded. He thought to himself, "Oh my, what's the origin of this star-moon palace? How is it related to the Eldritch world?" However, it was only a moment before he came to a realization. Nonsense, if there's no origin, how can there be an opportunity to enter the immortal world inside? How can two immortals, Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu, spend so much effort to enter? However, the Star-Moon Palace has yet to appear. Just this premonition should be enough to extinguish the ambitions of many cultivators, right? Thinking of this, Xiaohua looked around again. Indeed, the spaceship that Zhai Xinglu had restored had already descended from the sky and stopped steadily between the mountains. There were many Zhai Xinglu disciples sitting cross-legged on the spaceship. Every one of them was meditating, and wisps of noble chi and primordial chi of heaven and earth were entering the spaceship through the void. On the mountains around the spaceship, the 100 schools of thought had already dispersed. Many Confucian cultivators were lying on the ground dispiritedly. Some had blood at the corners of their mouths, some had blood seeping out of their 7 orifices, and some even had holes in their heads. Xiaohua was only at a corner of the Chidi River. When he looked at the other places, he saw many great demons with 7th-grade primordial chi scattered all over the place. Xiaohua's gaze swept across, and there were tens of thousands of them. Unlike humans, the great demons were mostly alone and did not have any followers. Moreover, among the tens of thousands of great demons, nearly 10% of them were lying on the ground, and they all looked seriously injured. There were even close to 100 great demons whose bodies had already collapsed, and it seemed that they would not survive. Not far from where the great demons were, there were some Buddhist disciples. There were not many of them, only about 1,000 of them. However, these Buddhas did not have the usual kind looks. Instead, they were all glaring angrily, and it was obvious that they were Buddhist guardians. On the other side of Jianghu Lu, the situation was different from that of the demon race. Although it was already dusk, there was a brilliant brilliance in this space. Layers of auspicious clouds spread out in the sky like a barrier. Pillars of awe-inspiring qi, driven by the inscriptions on the armor, danced like horned dragons. Images of men plowing and women weaving, scholars reading at night, and generals fighting on the battlefield appeared on the inscriptions on the armor. Above these images, there were 4 huge flower-shaped flying boats that emitted a low rumble, and a majestic, awe-inspiring aura spread out in all directions. This aura carried enlightenment, subservience, majesty, and also self-admiration. Oh! Just as Xiaohua was about to take a closer look at the 4 flower-shaped flying boats, a slightly puzzled voice sounded in his ears. "Why aren't you reacting?" Xiaohua turned his head and looked at Fairy Xingyu, who was standing not far away and looking at him. He smiled and said, "What kind of reaction does this junior need in order to express his admiration for the Star Moon Palace? Is it subservience to the aura in the premonition?" No. Fairy Xingyu was obviously not attracted by Xiaohua's deliberately awkward choice of words. Instead, she shook her head and said, "You definitely have some secrets that you have not mentioned. The premonition of the Star Moon Palace is extraordinary. Even when Su Ji and I saw it for the first time back then, we could not help but be deeply affected by it and almost suffered from it. However, you are completely fine. It even gives me a feeling that this is a common occurrence." "Oh? If even the 2 seniors are deeply affected by it, what about the other disciples?" Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly looked at the flying boat that Jianghu Lu had transformed into. "They are fine," Su Ji's voice sounded. "Because the premonition is too powerful, I have already placed a restriction outside the flying boat. The disciples of Jianghu Lu cannot see these premonitions. After a while, I will open the restriction and let them get used to the aura of the Star Moon Palace." "That's good." Xiaohua looked at the strange flying boat and said with a smile, "Senior, the style of this flying boat doesn't look very good." Chapter 4498. That's right. You have good taste. Fairy Xingyu was a little surprised by Xiaohua's reaction. Xiaohua wanted to distract her, but he couldn't. However, when Xiaohua mentioned the style of the spaceship, her attention was immediately attracted. She pursed her lips and said with a smile, "When I built this spaceship, I didn't like this style. But Su Ji said that this was the style of his hometown spaceship. He liked it, so I had to give in to him. Xiaohua, you really have good eyes. You can tell at a glance that this spaceship is not good-looking." "That's right." Xiaohua pointed to the huge deck and the cabin on the deck and said with a smile, "This style is too square. It's actually not suitable for the spaceship to fly. Junior's 2 thunderboats are not as big as Senior's spaceship, but in terms of flying speed, I'm afraid that Senior's spaceship can't compare. Your thunderboat borrowed the essence of the thunder-vanquishing bead and used the thunder pool as its driving force. It doesn't need any primordial stones or arrays as its foundation, so its speed is naturally fast." Su Ji glanced at Xiaohua and said, "Punisher Heavenly Lord has such a flying boat. How can I compare to Punisher Heavenly Lord?" Xiaohua patted his forehead and pretended to be surprised. "What a pity. What's wrong?" Fairy Xingyu was surprised and asked, "Did you forget something?" Xiaohua said in all seriousness, "Junior missed the opportunity to flatter the 2 seniors. The 2 thunderboats are exactly one for each of us." "Do you really have this intention?" Su Ji raised his eyebrows and asked. Xiaohua was originally joking. However, after hearing Su Ji's words, he pondered for a moment and immediately understood the meaning behind his words. Without any hesitation, Xiaohua took out 2 blank jade eyes from his bosom and placed them on his forehead. After a moment, he respectfully handed the 2 jade eyes to the 2 and said, "I presume that the 2 seniors don't care about the construction method of the thunderboat. This is the construction method of the thunder pool, and also the result of Junior's comprehension of the thunder-vanquishing bead. I hope the 2 seniors don't mind." Fairy Xingyu smiled slightly, took the jade eyes and said, At least you have a conscience. I've already given you so many things, and you only remembered to give me this little bit. The lightning pool has always been a secret of the immortal realm. You were able to obtain the thunder obliteration bead, so you obtained the method to create the lightning pool. Although I don't know if the lightning pool can be used in the immortal realm, it is still a prototype, a direction. Su Ji took the jade eye and nodded. Thank you. Then, Su Ji turned to look in the direction of the spaceship and said, someone is looking for you. Xiao Hua nodded and looked in the direction Su Ji was looking. He saw Gongshu Exian and Gongshu Yiming flying towards him with excitement and a hint of nervousness. Gongshu Exian flew in front while Gongshu Yiming hid behind her. Her face was still red. Xiao Hua smiled. He raised his hand and waved at the two women, indicating that they should fly over. Gongshu Exian immediately sped up, leaving Gongshu Yiming far behind. Gongshu Yiming stomped her feet in the air and chased after them. Gongshu Exian flew in front of Xiao Hua, tilted her head and looked at him. She hesitated for a moment, not knowing how to address him. Then she said, Senior Xiao, how did you cultivate? Xiao Hua was not unhappy to see this unsophisticated woman asking such a question. After all, only such a woman would have a pure heart. It was precisely this kind of cultivator that could be favored by the heavenly Tao. But he still said angrily, Palace Master Xingyue and Senior Su are here. Why don't you greet them first? Yes, I was wrong. Gongshu Exian was straightforward. She hurriedly bowed to Fairy Xingyu and Su Ji and said, Greetings to the two seniors. I just feel that Senior Xiao is really unbelievable. When I saw him last time, he was only about the 5th level of essence energy. In just 200 years, how did he reach the Mahayana realm? I really don't understand. I remember that I blood sacrificially refined an imperial artifact to test my age. Seeing Gongshu Exian speaking so casually, as though she was an old acquaintance of Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu, Xiao Hua coughed twice and said, Miss Exian, yes, Senior. Although Gongshu Exian was speaking to Fairy Xingyu, her ears were perked up. When she heard Xiao Hua calling her, she immediately said, What's the matter? Junior Gongshu Yiming greets the three seniors. At this moment, Gongshu Yiming had already flown over. She was completely different from Gongshu Exian. She greeted Xiao Hua politely and placed Xiao Hua last. This meant respect and intimacy. Although Gongshu Yiming was respectful, she still could not see Fairy Xingyu's eyes. Fairy Xingyu asked with interest, Exian continue? Sure. Gongshu Exian was about to continue when Gongshu Yiming smiled and said, Sister Exian, didn't you want to ask about the apprenticeship? Why are you talking about other things? That's right. Gongshu Exian immediately came to her senses and asked Xiao Hua, Senior, didn't you say you would find a master for me? Where is he? Xiao Hua smiled and said, Your master is a good friend of mine. His name is Wenchu. I don't know where he is now. Follow me. When you meet him, I will let you become his apprentice. Wenchu? Su Ji frowned slightly and said, What big words? Fairy Xingyu also felt strange and said, Xiao Hua, what is your good friend's cultivation level? How come I have never heard of his name? Junior's good friend is a hidden expert. Ordinary people don't know about him, Xiao Hua said and looked at Su Ji with a guilty conscience. After all, during the 5 brocade cloud painting battle at Black Wind Ridge, Xiao Hua had revealed 3 heavenly hearts. Xiao Hua did not know if Su Ji could see through it. Fortunately, Su Ji did not suspect him. He only looked indifferently at the Chitty River in the distance. However, at this glance, Xiao Hua discovered something strange. This was because Su Ji, who was as cold as a rock, actually had a rare sense of warmth when he saw Fairy Xingyu's appearance. What expert? How come I don't know? Fairy Xingyu obviously did not notice that warmth. She said angrily, Zhai Xinglu's Hall of Heroes has recorded all the high-level cultivators in the 3 continents. Even the Penglai Immortal Realm is no exception. Penglai Immortal Realm? Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He smiled and said, Are the Dao sect cultivators on the Xian ranking all cultivators from the Penglai Immortal Realm? Of course. Fairy Xingyu nodded and said, if it's not the Prenglai Immortal Realm, how can there be Dao sect cultivators with 8th grade essence power? Even if it's the Western Paradise, the Leiyin Temple would never allow high-level Dao sect cultivators to exist. Senior, how can a cultivator escape from the Penglai Immortal Realm? Xiao Hua said with a smile, after all, that thing is in the hands of Immortal Emperor Gaochen. How would I know? You can ask your good friend who is a Confucian cultivator to ask the Immortal Emperor. Fairy Xingyu said coldly, he's called Wenchu. I'm afraid he's on par with the Immortal Emperor, right? These words confused Gongshu Isin and Gongshu Yiming. They didn't dare to interrupt and could only wait by the side. Oh, by the way, Missy Exin, what did you say about the imperial equipment that you refined? Fairy Xingyu suddenly remembered and asked Gongshu Isin with interest. Gongshu Isin answered without thinking, it's nothing. It's just that the imperial equipment measured that Senior Xiao is only 400 or 500 years old. Xiao Hua wanted to stop her, but he thought that if he continued to talk, he would definitely reveal himself. Therefore, he simply stopped talking and waited for the last denial. Hee, that's impossible. Fairy Xingyu said with a smile, if he was 500 years old then and 300 years old now, he's only 800 years old. Who in this world can cultivate to the Mahayana realm before the age of 1000? Not only did Fairy Xingyu not believe it, but even Su Ji was stunned. He withdrew his gaze from the Chidi River and looked at Xiao Hua. Of course. Xiao Hua said with a smile, at that time, I said that the imperial equipment that Isin refined was a little off. What? When Gongshu Exin heard Xiao Hua say that her imperial equipment wasn't good, she immediately retorted unconvinced, Senior, Junior's imperial equipment isn't any different on Senior's body, but on other people's bodies, it works. That's Xiao Hua's problem. Fairy Xingyu said with a smile, Isin, do you still have that imperial equipment? Gongshu Isin nodded and said, of course. Ah, silly girl. Xiao Hua said earnestly, you should be careful. She is a senior, but she's only the palace master of Xingyue. What about me? I'm your future master's good friend. Can't you tell who's closer and who's further away? Don't be sold by others and count the copper coins for them. Yes. Gongshu Isin lowered her head and answered. Her figure flew more than 10 feet away from Fairy Xingyu. Little girl, how about I exchange this for your imperial equipment? Fairy Xingyu raised her hand and took out a jade eye and handed it to Gongshu Isin, saying, you can take a look at it before you decide. But Gongshu Isin took the jade eye. After looking at it, her face was filled with ecstasy and she said anxiously, Senior, this, Shu. Fairy Xingyu stopped Gongshu Isin from saying more and only asked, are you willing to exchange? This. Gongshu Isin thought for a moment and handed the jade eye back to Fairy Xingyu, saying, it's better not to exchange. What do you mean not to exchange? You must exchange. Xiao Hua was anxious. With a flick of his sleeve, he took the jade eye and said, just give your imperial equipment to her. She's in the bidding business. If you don't take advantage of her, who do you want to take advantage of? Yes, Senior. Gongshu Isin rolled her eyes and immediately understood Xiao Hua's words. Without hesitation, she took out the imperial equipment and respectfully handed it to Fairy Xingyu, saying, thank you, Senior. Chapter 4499. Of course, Fairy Xingyu did not care about Xiao Hua's narrow-mindedness. She took the imperial equipment and activated it slightly. Seeing layers of rainbows appear, Fairy Xingyu smiled and said, who said that Missy Exin is stupid? It is precisely this kind of pure-minded cultivator who can become an array master. I think this imperial equipment is really well refined. Xiao Hua, your good friend is lucky. Of course. Xiao Hua handed the jade eye to Gongshu Exin and said, Exin will definitely become an array master of her generation in the future. She will definitely be unprecedented. If she becomes unprecedented, what about her master? Fairy Xingyu pursed her lips and said with a smile. She will naturally be an unprecedented master. Xiao Hua was not afraid of Fairy Xingyu's sarcasm. This girl cultivates the 5 Qi Thunder? Su Ji also spoke. He looked at Xiao Hua thoughtfully and said, It's suitable for you to accept her as your disciple. I have enough disciples, so I won't snatch others' opportunities. Xiaohua touched his nose and smiled bitterly. You can't accept any more. Fairy Xingyu said with a smile, there is no more space on the Xianhuang list. Here is a small thing for you. Su Ji casually took out a palm-sized arc from his bosom, in which there were some lightning threads that formed a knot. He said, this is a natural object. It may not be comparable to the 5 brocade cloud painting, but if you can comprehend something from it, it will be more useful than any secret art or lightning array. Of course, Gongshu Yiming did not dare to act on her own. She looked at Xiaohua. Xiaohua smiled and said, why are you looking at me? Why wouldn't you want something that is delivered to your door? Thank you, senior. Gongshu Yiming was overjoyed. She took the arc-shaped object and stood beside Gongshu Exin happily, looking down at it. It's good to be young. Fairy Xingyu looked at the imperial equipment in her hand that flew across the sky like a rainbow bridge. Each section of the light was like a growth ring, which seemed to record the vicissitudes of life. She could not help but sigh. Maybe you don't have to care about the past. As long as you live each day well. Su Ji did not look at Fairy Xingyu. Fairy Xingyu bit her lips slightly and replied, a person will always be lonely. Only when the 2 butterflies fly will there be happiness. Xiaohua, look at that flying boat. Su Ji ignored Fairy Xingyu as if he was deaf. He pointed at a strange flower-like flying boat in the distance and said, that's the Dongfang family's bamboo flying boat. Bamboo flowers? Xiaohua stared blankly for a moment, then asked curiously, the flowers of bamboo? Don't tell me, bamboo can bloom? Su Ji replied indifferently, bamboo will naturally bloom. However, there is a saying in ancient books, every 60 years the bamboo will change its roots, and the roots will give birth to flowers, and the flowers will bear fruit, and the fruit will wither, and the fruit will fall and come back to life. Moreover, the bamboo cultivator sifted through the wind and played with the moon. He lived a carefree and unrestrained life, elegant and untainted. He was a modest gentleman. People often use bamboo as their symbol. However, no one knew that although bamboo had a noble character, after being in the mortal world for a long time, it would also be polluted. This bamboo flower was the bamboo's self-cleansing will. Whenever a bamboo flower appeared, it meant that the bamboo could no longer endure the filth and wanted to cleanse itself and be reborn. The Dongfang family is one of the 4 great families of the hidden immortal continent. They used bamboo flowers as the symbol of their family. It's really thought-provoking. Xiaohua looked at Ruojian, Ruosui, and the rice-like bamboo flowers and said with a wry smile, Junior only feels that this flying boat is uglier than Senior's flying boat. Fairy Xingyu couldn't help but laugh and said, don't let Dongfang Qianghao hear this, or he will fight you to the death. Senior. Gongshu Yiming was very obedient. At this time, he had already received the things that Su Ji gave him. He carefully pointed at another flying boat and said, that orchid-like flying boat belongs to the Shimin family. And this Xiao understands? Xiaohua nodded. An empty valley, a solitary flower, elegant and pleasant, is a virtuous person in the world. The Shimin family wants to be a solitary flower, but this Xiao doesn't know much about the 4 great families. I don't know if they can do it. All solitary flowers are fake. If they want to be a solitary flower, why would they appear in front of the Xingyue palace? Fairy Xingyue smiled coldly, looking very disdainful of the 4 great families. Xiaohua smiled slightly and pointed at the flying boat that was blooming with plum blossoms. He said with a smile, this is a noble person with lofty ideals. He stresses on exploring the waves and cutting the snow and ice. I'm afraid he's from the Nangong family, right? Senior is wrong. Gongshu Yiming corrected him bluntly. The Nangong family stresses elegance and independence. They don't follow the trend of the world and want to be a hermit. Their symbol is the chrysanthemum. Hearing this, Xiaohua also snorted and said lightly, Senior Xingyue said that the Shimin family's solitary flower is empty, but I said that the Nangong family's independence is bullshit. If they want to be a hermit, they can just hide in the mountains. Why do they have to show off here? Speaking of this, Xiaohua suddenly asked. Senior, the ancients often say that plum blossoms, orchid, bamboo, and chrysanthemum are the four gentlemen of flowers. They stress on pride, seclusion, firmness, and indifference. Junior wants to ask, is this ancient person earlier than the four great families? Ha! Without waiting for Xiaohua to finish speaking, Fairy Xingyue understood his meaning. She covered her mouth and laughed. Is there a need to ask? This ancient person, of course, is after the four great families. If there were no four great families, how could there be Confucian cultivators? If there were no Confucian cultivators, how could there be 100 schools of contending? In that case, Xiaohua said with a smile, the title of plum blossoms, orchid, bamboo, and chrysanthemum is some people flattering the four great families? Yes, if it wasn't a big flattery, how could four ordinary flowers be regarded as the four gentlemen? Fairy Xingyue also greatly belittled the Confucian cultivators. Gongshu Isin and Gongshu Yiming were dumbfounded. To be honest, they had never thought of this problem. A good illusion was actually said to be so unbearable by Xiaohua. However, if they thought about it carefully, what Xiaohua said was very reasonable. Why were the four gentlemen of flowers not lotus, not redbud, and not jade lotus? Why were they the most ordinary symbols of the four great families? Don't listen to their nonsense. Su Ji said in a faint tone, the predecessors can't be verified. Maybe the four great families picked the ones they liked from the four gentlemen. It's also possible. As the five of them spoke, the clouds above the four flying boats began to disperse. Many Confucian cultivators flew out of the flying boats, and these cultivators flew to different places. Some cultivators from the various families that had been resting in the mountain range also flew out and landed on the four flying boats. It seemed that they were going to visit the disciples of the four great families. It seems that there are many Confucian cultivator families close to the four great families. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes, looking at the Confucian cultivator disciples flying out, and said meaningfully. Fairy Xingyue said with a double meaning, whether there are many or few, I'm afraid there are more than the Sun family. Separated for a long time, united for a long time, divided for a long time. This seems to be a trend. Xiaohua nodded. Now is the time of turbulence, and it is also the time of heroes. If so, is it also the time for the Dao sect to rise? Fairy Xingyue looked at Xiaohua and reminded him worriedly. How would I dare to think about something that even the two seniors don't dare to think about? Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Besides, the rise of the Dao sect is not something that can be accomplished by one person's strength, nor is it something that can be achieved by one or two generations of disciples. Overestimating oneself is like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. You also know that it's like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Su Ji said with a rare smile. The Dao sect in the world has declined early. Today, the hidden immortal Dao sect is opened. With me, Xiaohua, in the world, how dare I let my disciples be bullied and humiliated? Ah! Xiaohua laughed. This is just one of my ambitions. With my strength and the time I have left, I'm afraid it's impossible to achieve it. Su Ji didn't say much. Fairy Xingyue smiled and said, you underestimate yourself too much. With your current ability, although you can't revive the Dao sect, the prosperity of the Dao sect is second only to the ancient times. Moreover, Xingyue. Su Ji frowned slightly and scolded. Yes. Fairy Xingyue rolled her eyes and said, and because of your gatha, we noticed you. Xiaohua naturally didn't believe Fairy Xingyue's words, but he didn't care that Fairy Xingyue didn't completely reveal her meaning. Fairy Xingyue must have said that he had the ability to revive the Dao sect, but Xiaohua knew himself well. He might have the ability to fight against the Immortal Emperor and the Vairocana Buddha, but it was absolutely impossible for him to revive the Dao sect. The current Fortune Gate was not afraid of any of the families of Confucian cultivators, the Sun family of the Immortal Palace, the Buddhist sect, or even any great saint of the demon clan. However, the powerful Dao sect of the ancient times was destroyed by the joint forces of the Immortals, Buddhists, and demons. How could the Fortune Gate be a match for the joint forces of the Immortals, Buddhists, and demons? Seeing that the three seniors were talking about the revival of the Dao sect in front of them, Gongshu Isin and Gongshu Yiming looked at each other and lowered their heads slightly, pretending not to hear. By the way, Su Ji suddenly asked, Xiao Hua, it seems that you are very resistant to the four great families. Could it be that you and the Sun family of the Immortal Palace, Senior, have you forgotten? I have a good friend who is a Confucian cultivator. 'Tis the Immortal General of the Immortal Palace. Xiao Hua reminded. I forgot. That Sun Wu is quite interesting. Su Ji nodded and then raised his eyebrows. He looked at the flying boat of the four great families and said, The disciples of the four great families are coming. I don't want to see them. You deal with them yourself. After saying that, Su Ji flew towards the Chidi River. Xiao Hua looked at Gongshu Isin and Gongshu Yiming and said, You two accompany the seniors and get to know the disciples of the four great families. Perhaps it will be beneficial for you in the future. Yes, Senior. Gongshu Isin and Gongshu Yiming agreed in a low voice. They watched Xiao Hua leave with Su Ji. When they turned around, they saw four martial grandmasters flying towards them. Fairy Xingyue didn't care, but Gongshu Yiming didn't dare to. She hurriedly wanted to greet them, but when she saw that Gongshu Isin didn't move, she hurriedly pulled on Gongshu Isin's sleeve. Just as she was about to speak, Fairy Xingyue said, You don't have to greet them. Chapter 4500. Yes, Senior. Gongshu Yiming hurriedly answered, standing there. We are Dongfang Yushan, Shimen Hingyue, Nangong Pingping, and Baiming Chihan. Greetings, Master of Stars and Moon. The four extraordinarily dignified 7th grade elemental force grandmasters cupped their fists in greeting. Greetings, Immortals. Fairy Xingyu did not find it strange and said with a smile, The last time I explored the Star Moon Palace, the four aristocratic families did not send the four fellow immortals. I presume that the four fellow immortals have already obtained opportunities in the Star Moon Palace and become literary sages? Dongfang Yushan smiled. You're right. The patriarchs of the four aristocratic families also sent us to greet you. Thank you for providing us with information. If you need our help in the future, please feel free to ask. When it comes to cooperation, both sides will benefit, but if we don't, both sides will suffer. Fairy Xingyu nodded slightly. Please go back and report to the patriarchs of the four aristocratic families that Zhai Xinglu is Xingyu's Zhai Xinglu and Moon Embracing Palace is Xingyu's Moon Embracing Palace. If they leave Xingyu, they will no longer be Zhai Xinglu and Moon Embracing Palace. The four Confucian cultivators looked at each other. Although they did not quite understand the meaning of these words, they somewhat understood in their hearts. They hurriedly nodded and said, We understand. After we reach the Star Moon Palace, we will definitely pass on these words to the patriarch. Good. Fairy Xingyu flicked her sleeves and said, The signs of the Star Moon Palace's appearance have already appeared. It won't be long before the Star Moon Palace appears. As usual, I will go in first, followed by the four aristocratic families. Thank you, Fairy. Dongfang Yushan looked at everyone and said, We will take our leave first. See you in the Star Moon Palace. Fairy Xingyu responded and turned to fly to the resting place of the Zhai Xinglu disciples. Dongfang Yushan flew back with Baiming Chihan and the others. Nangong Pingping smiled and said in a low voice, Brothers, this Master of Stars and Moon seems very arrogant. She doesn't seem to take us seriously. Brother Nangong seems to be interested in this woman? Baiming Chihan looked at Nangong Pingping with interest and smiled. I'm interested. Nangong Pingping did not hide his intentions and replied, It's a pity that before I left, the patriarch reminded me again and again that I must not disrespect the Master of Stars and Moons. I have the heart but not the strength. As long as you have the heart, you have the intention. Shimen Hingyue said with a smile, This huge star moon really makes all the forces in the world envious. If you can deal with the Star Moon Lord, doesn't Xingyue belong to the Nangong family? Nangong Pingping hurriedly waved his hand and said, I only have the intention. The one with the power is Brother Dongfang. As long as he lifts a finger, Xingyue, shu. Dongfang Yushan hurriedly stopped Nangong Pingping when he saw that Nangong Pingping's words were getting more and more unbearable. Brothers, just say what you want, don't be too frivolous. How could someone who could establish Star Moon be an ordinary person? The patriarch has already told us to be careful, so why should we look for trouble? I don't know about other cultivators, but senior brother Heng Si, who entered the Star Moon Palace last time, clearly said that the Master of Stars and Moons is a mutant. If you want to obtain an opportunity in the Star Moon Palace and come back alive, don't provoke the Master of Stars and Moons. Nangong Pingping shrunk his neck and said with a smile, I'm just saying. The disciples of the four great families flew back to the flying boat as they spoke. Beside the Chitty River, Xiaohua looked at the sparkling water and the moonlight and transmitted his voice. Senior, Su Ji did not understand why Xiaohua transmitted his voice and replied, What's the matter? Although Xiaohua was about to speak, he hesitated for a moment when the words reached his mouth. Just say it. Su Ji said, as long as it doesn't involve the secrets of the immortal world, I can answer you. Senior, in your hometown, before you ascended, did you have a dual cultivation partner? Xiaohua gritted his teeth and asked. You can't invade my privacy. Su Ji refused without hesitation. Alright. Xiaohua said helplessly, actually, Junior thinks that Fairy Xingyue is pretty good. She also has some feelings for Senior. Junior doesn't know if Senior can see it, but as an outsider, Junior can see it clearly. Junior missed a lot of good times before. I don't want Senior to have regrets in the future. Junior thinks that even if there is a gap between two celestial venerables in the immortal world, the matter between you two is a private matter and has nothing to do with the Palace of Punishment and the Palace of Justice. I know. Without waiting for Xiaohua to finish speaking, Su Ji replied in an unusually calm tone. As the saying goes, time breeds love. In the 3 continents, only Xingyue and I have something to talk about. The two of us have been together for so long, how can I not know her thoughts? Then, Senior's heart also has a knot in it? Xiaohua somewhat understood and asked tentatively. That's right. Su Ji nodded. Could it be that you don't have a knot in your heart? Shui didn't leave a mark in your heart? Forget it, Senior. Xiaohua raised his hands and surrendered. Just pretend that Junior didn't say anything. It's good that you understand. Su Ji looked at the surging river and whispered, everyone has their own experiences, everyone has their own choices, and everyone has their own consequences to face. I am a punishment envoy, so I naturally know more than you. In terms of feelings, when I was cultivating in my hometown, I could be considered romantic and elegant. But when you walk through flowers, you will always step on the petals and may even be injured by the thorns. When you turn around, other than the fragrance of the flowers on your clothes, how much beauty can you retain? Time flies, the autumn wind urges people, when the snowflakes flutter, even the branches of the flowers will wither. Hee, that's true. Xiaohua said with a smile, Senior's appearance is much more handsome than Junior's, and you have also learned a lot in this aspect. Junior just wanted to remind Senior. Roar. Xiaohua wanted to say something more, but somewhere in the Chitty River, a loud roar suddenly sounded, and beams of starlight and moonlight fell. It was actually a few great demons fighting. Sometimes I envy these demons. Su Ji looked and said with some emotion, if they want to fight, they fight, and if they want to scold, they have no scruples. Their cultivation is also unique. They don't care about Dao heart, Dao realm, nor are they afraid of inner demons. They only need to temper their demon bodies. Those are all demons with inheritances. Xiaohua said with a smile. There are also the vast majority of demons who don't know how to cultivate. They also learn from our Dao sex human race, wanting to condense a demon core in their body. Without waiting for Xiaohua to finish, Su Ji said, you are wrong. This world doesn't have a completely orthodox cultivation method. In the Demon League, there are also those who cultivate demon cores. Xiaohua was a bit dumbfounded. He was proficient in demon cultivation. That heaven-defying Thunder Phoenix was his clone. How is that possible? Nothing is impossible. Su Ji glanced at Xiaohua, somewhat surprised by his shock, and replied, The reason why the Demon League is called the Demon League is because it is made up of extremely suitable demon territories, and different demon territories have different cultivation methods. Either condense the body, condense the core or dharma body, or devour the demon soul and condense the soul body. Of course, there are many other methods even I don't know. Alas, it's a mess. Xiaohua sighed. Junior only thought that Junior knew the truth, but when the truth was revealed, Junior knew, the truth is not the truth, the illusion is also the truth. You are right. Su Ji nodded. What I said may not be right. After all, the Demon League is only the Demon League. What about above the immortal world? Above the Demon League? Xiaohua suddenly asked. Senior, what is the purpose of cultivation? Su Ji smiled. It's a secret. Xiaohua shrugged and said in a low voice, all right, just pretend that Junior didn't ask anything. The truth of the matter is the truth of the world. It is also like water flowing when the channel is right. If it is not the time for you to know, then you don't have to know. And when it is time for you to know, the truth will float in front of your eyes without waiting for you to find it. Su Ji said, I have been a punishment envoy for so many years, I have also experienced many things. From these things, I have obtained 4 words. Let nature take its course. Xiaohua's words hit the nail on the head. Yes, that's right. Su Ji nodded, not sounding surprised. You have a very easygoing temper. It is easy for you to let nature take its course. This is also Junior's shortcoming. You can say that I am an unambitious person. I like to live a comfortable life that is not as good as the best, but better than the worst. This is already the best life. Su Ji sighed. Why is the fight getting fiercer? As they spoke, another 100 great demons joined the battle. The battle was getting bigger and bigger. Xiaohua asked worriedly, don't we need to shout for them to stop? Don't worry about them. Su Ji glanced casually and said, the demon clan has always been like this. Before the Xingyue Palace appears, the power of the starlight will become violent. This will incur the wrath of some great demons with unstable foundations, and it will be easy for fights to break out. When their eyes turn red from fighting, that is when the Xingyue Palace appears. Hearing this, Xiaohua hurriedly turned to look at Zhai Xinglu's spaceship. Indeed, Fairy Xingyue had already given the order from Zhai Xinglu, and a group of Zhai Xinglu's disciples began to prepare for departure. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at Chidi River. The space that had been disturbed by the fluctuations earlier had sped up again. Layer upon layer of silver tadpole-like light spots had already covered nearly 10,000 miles of the river surface. Under the silver light, the previously orange river surface gave off a crimson glow, looking very strange. Xiaohua muttered in his heart, the Xingyue Palace is finally going to appear. This famous Xingyue Palace. What will it look like? Thinking of the Xingyue Palace, Xiaohua unconsciously thought of the illusory array in the ruins when he fought with the unrestrained heavenly demon. A shuddering feeling quietly emerged from the bottom of his heart. Or rather, a shadow gradually shrouded his heart. Could it be a trap? Xiaohua couldn't help but look at Su Ji. Su Ji didn't pay attention to anything else, but instead focused his attention on the sky above the Chidi River. His face was slightly nervous. Xiaohua was slightly relieved. It shouldn't be. This is not the first time we have entered the Xingyue Palace. Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue have already explored the passageway a few times and returned safely. Chapter 45:01. Another hour passed. Suddenly, the crescent moon that was hanging in the sky for half a day suddenly streaked across the vast sky and nailed itself in the middle of the night sky. Furthermore, the crescent moon from before suddenly expanded, revealing other parts of the shadow. A full moon was swollen and scattered moonlight. The night sky that was originally filled with brilliant stars was now filled with no stars at all. This moonlight was so bright that tens of thousands of miles around the Chidi River were as bright as day. In just a moment, the full moon seemed to shatter, turning into tens of thousands of fragments. Even the moonlight that filled the sky was also divided. Pillars of light appeared in the night sky, and at this time, the night sky seemed to be unable to cover the Chidi River, turning into darkness that was mixed in between the pillars of light. Boom! a muffled sound rang out. Although it came from the horizon, it also shook the hearts of all the humans and demons. The entire world shook under this roar. Like a watermelon being opened, the stars in the night sky were like melon seeds inside the melon, flashing with a black brilliance. It was clearly a black brilliance, but in the dark night, it was clearly seen by people. However, when Xiaohua's eyes turned, the black turned into a red color. After the red color, the 6 colors of orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple flashed clearly. In the end, every starlight turned into a halo, revealing a translucent milky white starlight. Wang wang wang. On the Chitty River, the space within tens of thousands of miles was shaking. The river water that previously seemed to be tightly pressed down by a large hand was now slowly being split. In just a few breaths, the seemingly endless and bottomless Chitty River was actually split into 2 halves. The severed river water was not like an ordinary river water, forming waves, but was still as calm as before. Swish, swish, swish. At the same time the Chitty River was cut off, the moonlight that had previously splashed across the Thousand Demons' sacred realm also began to gather, falling within a radius of 1,000,000 miles around the Chitty River. The mottled light and shadow looked like a layer of a giant tree's crown blocking the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. As the light and shadow fell, a thick shadow gradually appeared. An indescribable majesty, heaviness, fear, and suppression seeped out from this shadow. With the appearance of this black shadow, countless chaotic fluctuations rushed out in all directions. Space began to be disturbed, and the heaven and earth origin energy, as well as the aura of righteousness, turned into chaos. An apocalyptic pressure descended upon the Crimson River. Primordial world? As soon as Xiaohua came in contact with this fluctuation and aura, his expression immediately changed. He was simply too familiar with this aura. The ruins were still fine, as the aura of the human clan had rushed out of the desolation aura. However, the incomplete desolation continent was filled with this kind of desolation aura. However, on the incomplete eldritch continent, the aura of the eldritch continent was not complete, or rather, it was as ordinary as grass. It did not have the domineering and ferocious aura of the Star Moon Palace before him. Boom, boom, boom. In the middle of the moon, the silhouette of the Star Moon Palace was revealed. Following that, countless pillars of stars shot down. Just like the moonlight, the starlight that had previously covered the entire Thousand Demons' sacred realm was now all projected onto the outline of the Star Moon Palace. Pillars of starlight transcended time and space and landed on the Chitty River. The pillars of starlight were first twisted into knots before rushing into the outline of the Star Moon Palace. In just a few breaths' time, a huge object whose entire outline could not be seen clearly appeared above the Chitty River. This huge object was completely condensed from the brilliance of the moon and stars. Countless huge spots of light swam wantonly within it. Every time it moved, a majestic desolation aura would rush into the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Wherever this desolation aura passed, hundreds of miles of space would be penetrated, forming a chaotic layer that isolated the Star Moon Palace from the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Senior, is this the Star Moon Palace? Seeing that the Star Moon Palace had appeared, but it was not what he had imagined at all, Xiaohua could not help but ask, "Why? Can't I see the palace door? I can't see the palace either?" Su Ji replied indifferently, "Who told you that the Star Moon Palace must be a palace? Who told you that something named by Fairy Xing you must have a plaque of the Star Moon Palace?" "Sigh, I understand now." Xiaohua sighed. This Star Moon Palace might not be a palace at all. It might not be. However, it's most likely still a palace. Su Ji replied. "When we first entered, the Star Moon Palace already looked like a palace. Otherwise, why would Fairy Xingyu name this object the Star Moon Palace? Moreover, there are also halls inside the Star Moon Palace. What about the palace door?" Xiaohua smiled bitterly. "Without the palace door, how do we enter? Don't be anxious, don't be anxious." Su Ji said unhurriedly. "The entrance will appear eventually. It's just a matter of time." That's true. Why should I be anxious?" Xiaohua nodded. "Indeed," Su Ji replied casually. You're not anxious, but the eunuch is. What? Xiao Hua was stunned. He did not quite understand. It's nothing. Su Ji was slightly taken aback. He then explained, this is a saying from my hometown. Oh. Seeing that Su Ji did not explain further, Xiao Hua responded and released his divine thought. However, when his divine thought touched the chaotic layer of space, it was immediately shattered by the space. He could not pass through it at all. At the edge of the space, the desolation aura was abnormally dense. This star-moon palace really looks like an ancient relic. At this point, Xiao Hua no longer had any doubts about the origins of the star-moon palace. This was because he could clearly see with his naked eye that this star-moon palace was somewhat similar to Panga's axe. What the star-moon palace had revealed earlier was not a real palace, but an illusory silhouette. Only after the pillar of light from the stars and moon had fallen did it solidify into a real body. Seeing this, Xiao Hua had some understanding. Wasn't Panga's axe the same? On the Desolation continent, Panga's axe was just an illusory silhouette. Only in the 3 continents would Panga's axe become a real body. Of course, the Star-Moon Palace was on the other side of a chaotic layer of space. If this layer of space disappeared, the complete Star-Moon Palace would definitely be revealed. Xiao Hua and Su Ji were fully focused on observing the Star-Moon Palace. The other forces were also rubbing their palms together. The disciples of Zhai Xinglu had already flown behind Xiao Hua and Su Ji, lining up in the formation they had rehearsed earlier, waiting for the right time. In the distance, the disciples of the 4 great clans were also waiting in formation, waiting for the Star-Moon Palace to make a move. Behind the 4 great clans and the Star-Moon Palace, the 100 schools of thought, which were Confucian cultivators, were also eyeing covetously. The Star-Moon Palace was huge. In other places, some Taoist cultivators, some Buddhist protectors, and most of the great demons of the demon clan released their remarkable abilities, waiting for the Star-Moon Palace to open. Fairy Xingyu flew to Su Ji's side and said softly, "So far, I haven't seen anything unusual." "No." Su Ji shook his head. "The power of the stars and moon this time is too strong. The spatial barrier around the Star-Moon Palace is also too thick. I'm afraid it won't be easy to pass through." Isn't it that 7 stars great sage from the Great Sage Hall?" Fairy Xingyu gritted her teeth in hatred. He didn't become a sage earlier or later, but he actually became a sage at this juncture. Moreover, not only did he trigger the 7 stars transit, but he also triggered the 10,000 stars transit after entering the Great Sage Hall. Of course, this greatly increased the strength of the 1,000 demons' sacred realm, but it also triggered too much of the power of the stars and moon in the 3 continents. Su Ji did not complain like Fairy Xingyu. Instead, he said softly, "We can pass through this spatial barrier easily, but the disciples of Zhai Xinglu and those cultivators who are sensitive to the power of the stars and moon will be in trouble." "What are you afraid of?" Fairy Xingyu pursed her lips and smiled. She looked as if she had a card up her sleeve. She said, "If it was the last time, we would naturally have to worry and waste our dermic powers. But this time, we don't have to worry at all." Although Fairy Xingyu did not look at Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Before Su Ji could speak, he said, "Seniors, you don't have to worry about this. Leave it to me. I'll keep them in the Kunlun mirror first and release them after they enter." "There's another problem," Fairy Xingyu said worriedly. "I'm afraid that we won't be able to find a pavilion in the Star-Moon Palace where we can use storage bags. That'll be troublesome." "Ah." Xiao Hua was stunned and asked curiously, "Senior, do you mean there's no way to use imperial weapons or magic treasures like the Heaven and Earth bracelet in the Star-Moon Palace?" "Of course." Fairy Xingyu smiled bitterly. "I don't know why the Star-Moon Palace is so strange. Even among the immortals. Sigh, it seems that there are very few such restrictions. Let's keep these cultivators in the Kunlun mirror first." Su Ji ordered without hesitation. "Although the Starry Sky maze is difficult, we have a 20% chance of success. Including them, it's only 40%. Now that Xiao Hua is with us, even if he has a 10% chance, it's still 30%. It's best if these cultivators can come out. If they can't, then they can't." Okay. Xiao Huan nodded and said to Fairy Xingyu, Fairy, come with me and let those disciples of Zhai Xinglu enter my Kunlun mirror. But Fairy Xingyue responded and was about to turn around and fly back. Woo! A gust of wind suddenly whistled. In the distance, where the demon clan had gathered, a great demon that was at least 10,000 feet in size suddenly flapped its wings and pounced toward Xingyue Palace, wanting to take the lead. Damn it! Fairy Xingyu paused and raised her right hand. A halo of stars appeared on her right index finger. However, Fairy Xingyu was still a little too slow. Just as she was about to point it out, the great demon had already rushed into the chaotic space. Swoosh! The great demon's body landed. Dazzling starlight shone from the great demon's body as it rushed into the space. The great demon's body instantly expanded by more than 30%. In just a few breaths, the great demon's body had completely disappeared into the space. At this moment, wherever the great demon's body passed, starlight shone and traces of its flight were clearly visible. What puzzled Xiao Hua and the others was that although the great demon seemed to be approaching the Star Moon Palace in an arc, what was revealed in the chaotic interlayer space was actually a complicated bowknot. Chapter 4502. When the great demon flew into the middle of the chaotic mezzanine, the light from his body was suddenly extinguished. His body, which had expanded previously, rapidly shrank at the same time and returned to its original size in the blink of an eye. Not only that, but in the next few breaths, the great demon's body continued to shrink until it was only 30% of its original size. Humph, you're courting death. Fairy Xingyu's expression was cautious at first, but when she saw the great demon's body shrink, a sneer appeared on her face. She said to Xiao Hua, Let's go. There's no need to look anymore. The door to the Star Moon Palace has not been opened yet. If you go in now, you'll only die. Xiao Hua nodded and retreated steadily. His gaze was still fixed on the great demon. Sure enough, Xiao Hua had only flown a few dozen feet when the great demon's body and mind suddenly swayed in the spatial mezzanine. Like a kite that had lost its string, it kept tumbling in the wind. Every time it tumbled, the great demon's body shrank. When it had shrunk to the size of a few dozen feet, it turned into a shadow and fell into the Chidi River. Unfortunately, there were no waves on the Chidi River. Who knew what kind of spatial crevice this reckless great demon had fallen into? You want to enter the Star Moon Palace before my Zhai Xinglu? What a joke! Fairy Xingyu said hatefully. If the Star Moon Palace was so easy to enter, would the 4 aristocratic families let my Zhai Xinglu enter first? Xiao Hua smiled faintly and did not agree. He was still wondering why the spatial mezzanine was so strange. Fairy Xingyu ordered, and the disciples of Zhai Xinglu obeyed. Xiao Hua took out the Kunlun mirror and activated his dermic powers to send the disciples into the Kunlun Wonderland. Gongshu Isin, Gongshu Yiming, and Emo Jianli naturally followed him in. However, they were in the Shenhua continent. Zhai Xinglu was now the center of attention. Everything that Xiao Hua did fell into everyone's eyes. Seeing the disciples of Zhai Xinglu disappear, the disciples of the 4 aristocratic families smiled thought-provoking. While Xiao Hua was casting his technique, Su Ji transmitted his voice over from afar. Fairy Xingyu did not disturb Xiao Hua and flew over. At that moment, the thick and massive silhouette of the Star Moon Palace began to move. The light of the stars and the moon that had previously condensed into the silhouette of the Star Moon Palace flowed like stars. High up in the sky, the light of the stars and the moon continued to fall, colliding with the flowing brilliance of the Xingyue Palace. A scene that was more dazzling than all the fireworks in the world was presented before everyone. The light fell into the chaotic interlayer in the middle, refracting layers of magnificent illusions. These illusions were like a fairyland, like the traces of a devil. Traces of unfathomable fluctuations were also emitted. The fireworks lasted for the time it took to brew a cup of tea before a saber-shaped brilliance strangely flashed past. Then, a cluster of waves rushed out from the Star Moon Palace. The fireworks were split in half by the saber light. The waves seeped out from the gap and a shadow that looked like the word, convex, was born from the fireworks. As soon as this shadow appeared, It immediately expanded along with the fluctuations. Layers upon layers of overlapping shadows rushed into the chaotic interlayer of space. What was very strange was that when this shadow entered the interlayer, it began to spiral and twist in the same way as when the great demon flew in. In just a moment, countless convex-shaped shadows began to spread throughout the entire interlayer of space. No one could tell which shadow was connected to which. Xiaohua! Su Ji called out in a deep voice. This is the door of the Star Moon Palace. Let's prepare to enter. Xiaohua had just kept the Kunlun mirror and flew to Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu's side. When he saw this situation, he naturally knew that the Star Moon Palace door had appeared. However, what Xiaohua had never expected was that this Star Moon Palace door was a little too strange, wasn't it? Not to mention that there was no lofty gatehouse, not to mention that there were no imposing flower pillars, there wasn't even the outline of the door. It was just a specious shadow. Of course, the way this shadow appeared was really annoying. The path that stepped into the shadow was filled with death. Xiaohua involuntarily cried out, This is the so-called Star Moon Palace door? I've thought about it for a long time and looked forward to it for so many years. I really never dreamed that the Star Moon Palace door would be like this. Do you think that the palace door is all dignified? Do you think that the palace door is all carved beams and painted pillars? Fairy Xingyu sneered. Don't you see that there are 9 other doors in the Immortal Palace? In addition to these 9 doors, there are also side doors and side doors. If an ordinary Confucian cultivator wants to enter the Immortal Palace, do you expect him to enter through the main door? Xiaohua touched his nose in boredom and said with a wry smile, Yes, cats have their own ways, and mice have their own ways. Could it be that the Star Moon Palace door is different from the usual one? In the eyes of the ancient god clan, we are indeed inferior to cats and mice. Fairy Xingyu sighed. However, after Fairy Xingyu finished speaking, Su Ji exclaimed in surprise, Oh no! Xingyu, look, the light path of the palace door did not break through the spatial mezzanine. We are not even qualified to set foot in the palace door. How is that possible? Fairy Xingyu was shocked. She hurriedly looked over. Sure enough, countless convex, light shadows covered the spatial mezzanine. However, these light shadows were all within the mezzanine, and none of them fell on the edge of the mezzanine. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Fairy Xingyu cursed angrily and flew toward the Chidi River. Su Ji looked at Xiaohua and slowed down a little. Xiaohua asked in a low voice, Senior, what did it look like in the past? In the past, the shadows of these palace doors came out from the spatial mezzanine. There were tens of thousands of shadows in the space. Su Ji explained in a low voice, We only needed to rely on our celestial artifacts to find the correct shadows and the correct route. Now that the shadows of the palace door can't be seen, Senior's celestial artifacts can't work, right? Xiaohua asked. Yes, that's right. Su Ji nodded and explained. As you can see, the waves that are emitted from the Star Moon Palace are left behind from the ancient times when the Star Moon Palace was being refined. It is different from the waves of Yuan Qi of the heaven and earth and the waves of the formation. When these fluctuations fall into the space of the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, they will collapse the nearby space, forming a kind of mezzanine. Within this mezzanine, there is a kind of disorderly chaos. There is no heaven-earth essence Qi, no righteous Qi, and only a little light from the stars and the moon. You saw it just now. When a 7th grade essence Qi great demon falls into this space, it becomes an ordinary demonic beast. Not to mention our celestial artifacts, even immortal artifacts can't be activated here. In other words, the 2 seniors can't be sure which of these countless shadows of the palace door is the real one. Xiaohua frowned and immediately thought of the situation when he was searching for the entrance to the mysterious water palace on the Saint River. The entrance to the mysterious water palace was formed by the light shadows through a vortex. It looked different from the entrance to the Star Moon Palace, but in fact, they were similar. However, the palace door of the Star Moon Palace was more complicated and harder to find. These shadows of the palace door are all fake. Su Ji's expression did not change as he explained faintly, Only the door that appeared on the Star Moon Palace is the real one. What we are really looking for is the fluctuation that rushed out of the door. This fluctuation repels the disorderly chaos around it, forming a temporary passage. In this mezzanine space, only this passage is safe. Seniors, why didn't you tell me earlier? Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Otherwise, I could have thought of other ways, Fairy Xingyu said helplessly, because we have a probing celestial artifact. The previous few times, this space mezzanine was not a problem at all. I didn't expect that we can't even step into the Star Moon Palace's door this time. There are so many shadows of the palace door. Xiaohua looked around and secretly wondered if he should activate the Delusion Breaker Dharma Eye. After all, the Delusion Breaker Dharma Eye was a rather secretive divine ability. He did not want so many humans and demon clans to know about it for the time being. There are more than that. Fairy Xingyu smiled bitterly. There's more? Xiaohua was shocked. As expected, before he could finish his sentence, he saw the Star Moon Palace move again. The brilliance of the stars and moon that had condensed into the Star Moon Palace flowed again. The protruding door also moved. As it moved, another wave of fluctuation was generated from the door, crashing into the spatial mezzanine. Illusory palace doors that were exactly the same as the previous one appeared again. They either intersected or overlapped with the previous ones, causing the entire spatial mezzanine to become even more chaotic. Damn it! Fairy Xingyu could no longer bear it. She opened her mouth and spat out a palm-sized star shuttle. As soon as the star shuttle appeared, it immediately emitted bright starlight. Countless heaven and earth yuan qi rushed into it like a gust of wind. Fairy Xingyu formed a seal with one hand. This seal was so obscure that even someone as strong as Xiaohua could not understand it. When Fairy Xingyu's hand glowed with moonlight that resembled fireflies, she raised her hand and waved it. The moonlight fell into the star shuttle. The star shuttle was transparent and rushed into the sky. The star shuttle landed in the space mezzanine in front of Xiaohua and immediately exploded, turning into a starry sky that was thousands of miles in size. There were many stars twinkling in the starry sky. Each star corresponded to a shadow of a palace door within this 1,000 miles. Penetrate! Fairy Xingyu shouted softly. Every star extended a pillar of stars and shot into the space mezzanine. It seemed that Fairy Xingyu wanted to break through the space mezzanine by force. The pillar of starlight shot into the spatial mezzanine. Similar to the great demon from before, it expanded abruptly. However, after charging a few li, the pillar of starlight showed signs of dissipating. Moreover, the pillar of starlight started to bend, and its entire trajectory condensed into a knot of light. Disregarding the fact that the knot of light was intermittent, whether Xiaohua and the others could safely reach the correct palace door phantom after charging through the pillar of starlight. Based on the fact that the pillar of starlight had turned into stardust after charging a few more li, Xiaohua understood that given Immortal Xingyu's methods, she probably wouldn't be able to find the true palace door phantom. Su Ji, give me a hand. Fairy Xingyu shouted, unwilling to admit defeat. I don't believe it. Chapter 4503. Even if I can help you, I'm afraid we don't have enough time. Su Ji's face also showed disappointment as he replied bitterly, it will take too long for your star shuttle to rush into the spatial mezzanine. I'm afraid we won't be able to find the real palace door. The palace door of the Star Moon Palace has already closed. What? Xiaohua was shocked again. How long will the palace door of the Star Moon Palace last? Why didn't you say so earlier? Su Ji did not explain to him. He only said, 2 hours at most, half an hour at least. Oh, there's still time. Xiaohua nodded and asked again, if this junior can find the general area, senior will be able to activate the star shuttle, right? You can determine the general area? Fairy Xingyu was overjoyed. This junior will try. Xiaohua nodded. However, this junior can't guarantee it. Xiaohua, you are indeed our savior. Fairy Xingyu shouted, Su Ji, your divination technique is really accurate. Seniors, get ready. Xiaohua said in a low voice as he looked around. On the entire Crimson Ground River, Tens of thousands of humans and demons were watching the three of them perform a one-man show. By the way, Senior, you can also ask the four great families and the great demons to think of a way. We can't always be the vanguard. Xiaohua thought of a way to distract them and whispered to Fairy Xingyu. Fairy Xingyu nodded and said, yes, they used to follow Zhai Xinglu and drink soup. Now let them do something. After saying that, Fairy Xingyu flew up into the sky and sent a voice transmission to the four great families, the Confucian cultivators, and the great demons of the demon clan. Xiaohua nodded at Su Ji and the two of them flew closer to the spatial mezzanine. Su Ji waved his hand and the exploded star shuttle was restored. The dim starlight fell into his hand. Xiaohua stopped and turned his head to look. Under Fairy Xingyu's voice transmission, the four great families and the Confucian cultivators were also a little flustered. They gathered together to discuss, while the great demons of the demon clan rushed into the mezzanine one after another. They each found a direction and activated their innate divine abilities, trying to find the real palace door. Senior, Xiaohua whispered, please protect this junior. I don't want others to see my divine abilities. All right. Without another word, Su Ji raised his arms high into the sky and spread his 5 fingers. Like a peacock spreading its tail, lightning immediately enveloped the surrounding hundreds of miles. Inside the thunder, Xiaohua slapped his forehead. A ghostly green light flashed and the delusion breaker eyes slowly opened. Hiss! Xiaohua couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when he saw everything through the illusion breaker eye. In front of Xiaohua's eyes was an incomparably huge golden color. This golden color made Xiaohua's delirium transcendence eye sour. Within the golden light, an irregular orange hole that looked like a hole was slowly moving. The orange hole radiated a tricolored flow. This flow was like a spring rushing into a grayish-black flowing wave. The flowing wave was shaking violently. Clusters of green and silver flashed constantly. The tricolored flow created a faintly discernible passageway in the flowing wave, and then dissipated within the flowing wave. Over there, Xiaohua whispered to Su Ji. However, the illusory image of the palace door is changing from time to time. All right. Su Ji's face was still calm as he replied via voice transmission, as long as you can roughly determine the range. After saying that, Su Ji turned around and sent a voice transmission to Fairy Xingyu. Fairy Xingyu was currently saying something to the Shimen family. She did not expect Xiaohua to be able to determine the location in such a short period of time. Therefore, without another word, she immediately teleported to Xiaohua's side. Fairy Xingyu's actions naturally attracted the attention of the 4 great families. While they were discussing, they were also watching the movements of Xiaohua and the others. Su Ji sent a voice transmission to Fairy Xingyu. The two of them exchanged opinions and then led Xiaohua to the location of the illusory image of the palace door. At this moment, some great demons of the demon clan had already begun to force their way into the spatial mezzanine. There were also some Confucian families and heavenly kings of the Buddhist sect who had made preparations. They activated their imperial equipment or heavenly eyes to explore the spatial mezzanine. They saw the illusory image of the palace door. At this time, because the Star Moon Palace had moved again, there were already more than 10,000 illusory images of the palace door within 100 miles. Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, Senior Su, please continue to protect me. I will activate my divine ability first. After I have some clues, can you activate your magic treasure? No need. Su Ji shook his head and said, save your magic power first. There are still places in the Star Moon Palace that need your help. Here, according to our previous discussion, Fairy Xingyu and I will take action. Yes, Su Ji is right. Fairy Xingyu also nodded and said, there are many places that rely on the power of thunder. It's better for you to save your strength. With that, Fairy Xingyu nodded at Su Ji and said, you go first. I will activate it later. Let's find the right palace door first. Xiaohua hurriedly sent a voice transmission, Fairy, just follow the direction I know. There's no need to search anymore. What? This time, even Su Ji was shocked. Your divine ability can actually see through the space that is close to chaos? It seems like it. Xiaohua nodded. Seeing that a few heavenly kings from the Buddhist sect were also coming over, he said, "Let's hurry up and take action. Otherwise, the Buddhist sect will take the lead." "Alright." Su Ji nodded. He raised his hand and took out a broken beast-shaped jade piece. The beast shape looked similar to the Luna beast in the Bright Moon Palace. However, it was broken and one could not see its full appearance. Su Ji opened his mouth and a water-blue thunderbolt fell into the jade piece. The entire jade piece emitted a blue brilliance. Boom! The moonlight that had originally fallen into the Star Moon Palace split into a pillar of moonlight and fell into the jade piece. Then, a broken outline of the Luna beast appeared in front of Xiaohua. "It is indeed the Luna beast." Xiaohua understood. Su Ji explained, "This is an ancient relic I obtained when I was patrolling the borders of a forbidden area. I don't know its specific power, but I can barely activate the moonlight within it. Xingyue, come and lend me a hand. Once Xiaohua confirms the correct phantom image of the palace door, we will connect this pillar of starlight to that phantom image." "If that's the case." Fairy Xingyu bit her lip and said softly, "Won't the people from the 4 aristocratic families take advantage of us again? The Star Moon Palace was meant for them to take advantage of us." Su Ji scolded without holding back. "Furthermore, at this point, why are you still thinking about this?" "There." Since he was not afraid of others taking advantage of them, Xiaohua did not hide it anymore. He raised his hand and pointed at the spot where the tricolored brilliance had disappeared. Fairy Xingyu looked over. Indeed, there were several palace door shadows at the place where Xiaohua had pointed. Fairy Xingyu's face turned solemn. She slowly formed a seal with both hands. Layers of mist-like brilliance appeared in the surrounding void. When a low rumbling sound was heard, Fairy Xingyu raised her hand again. It was as if she was holding a heavy object in her hand. Then, she slowly dropped it toward the Luna Beast's shadow. Squeak! The Luna Beast's shadow made a sound that Xiaohua was familiar with. Then, the shadow started to solidify. Su Ji did not dare to delay. He opened his mouth and a mouthful of blood essence mixed with silver light fell into the Luna Beast's brilliance. Then he pushed the blood essence along Xiaohua's moving finger. The Luna Beast immediately moved and rushed into the interlayer of space. In the chaotic interlayer of space, the Luna Beast's body could not help but spread out. However, there was a swaying tail behind it. The starlight in the tail was so bright that it dispersed the chaotic aura. "Let's go!" When Xiaohua saw the passageway appear, he hurriedly urged his body to rush in. However, Su Ji said in surprise, "Don't be hasty. The palace door shadow has appeared before." "Senior." Xiaohua smiled and said, "The palace door shadow is just a facade." When Su Ji heard this, he could not help but laugh. Then he held his forehead and said, "I have fallen into a habitual mindset." Habitual mindset? Xiaohua did not understand what Su Ji meant. However, before he could ask further, Su Ji turned his head and said, "Xingyu, follow behind me." "Xiaohua, stay at the back and protect me." "Yes, senior." Xiaohua nodded. Su Ji stood up, and layers of strange markings appeared on his body. These markings rushed into the air and turned into tadpole-like runes, and when the runes flashed, a layer of dragon scale-like armor appeared around Su Ji's body. There were many lightning runes on this armor, and an indescribable aura was emitted from the armor. Looking at Fairy Xingyu, the marks also fell off her body and arms. A layer of soft armor that was engraved with many mysterious runes was also revealed. This soft armor was covered in starlight. Whoosh! Su Ji's body swayed and a thunderbolt crashed into the star mark. He chased after the moon beast. Fairy Xingyu turned her head and looked at Xiaohua. She was a little surprised that Xiaohua did not take out any Dharma treasure or armor to protect himself. However, she did not have time to say more. She only nodded and signaled Xiaohua to be careful. Then she turned into a ray of starlight and chased after him. The two immortals flew into the passageway and immediately emitted strange lights and shadows. The lights and shadows seemed to be extremely long and wide at the same time. An aura was emitted from the passageway like a tidal wave. Xiaohua took a deep breath and activated the vital energy in his body. Buzz buzz. Countless sword hairs appeared on the surface of his body. When he turned into a sword, Xiaohua also flashed and rushed into the passageway. Quick! The actions of the three naturally attracted the attention of the Confucian cultivators from the four aristocratic families. Dongfang Yushan waved his hand without hesitation and said, "According to the agreement with Zhai Xinglu, let's go in." Yes. The disciples of the Dongfang family responded happily. They formed a group and flew toward the Chidi River. The starry sky passageway, which was dozens of feet wide, became bigger and expanded in all directions. Before the disciples of the Dongfang family arrived, the Buddhist sex guardians, who had been paying attention to Xiaohua and the others, had already arrived. They also activated their bodies without hesitation and entered the passageway.